Hey, good afternoon. I'm going to call this session of Board of Revision to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and it's the traditional homeland of the Winnipeg Nation. With me, farthest to my left is Robert Hutchings. Right to my left is Ron Stanley. My name is Harvey Diamond. The City Assessment Department is represented by Cam Wong, and our Executive Assistant Secretary is Kathleen Sutherland. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision have been requested are described in each application, and we will limit the discussion to those matters. All statements that applicants or the assessors may make at this hearing must be sworn testimony, and everyone speaking to these matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparative assessments of properties are not considered evidence by our board. Our board is appointed annually by council. We're independent of it and the city administration. We make our decision on the basis of the evidence that we hear, and will provide written orders which will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that our decisions with respect to an application will be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to an application for exemption from taxation. And should a party wish to appeal, the matter in which to do so will be included with our order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed to each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by any questions that may be asked by the applicant and board members, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions from all parties. Once all evidence upon the application has been brought forward, that party may leave. The person will repeat for every matter on the docket today, and after all the matters have been heard, we will close our session, we will deliberate in private, and we will send out written orders by written mail as soon as possible. This information is being recorded and live streamed and will be forming part of a public record. Will you swear the parties in? Thank you.
Please state your name.
Cam Wong.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please state your name.
Sid Story.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first matter on our docket is 299 Queen Street. And
Is it okay if I speak to the board?
Sure.
May I? Great.
if you have something to speak about that it's timely, go ahead and do so.
What it is, Mr. Chair, is there's really only one argument. We've only got one argument for all these different dockets. So we were going to suggest, and Mr. Wong agreed, if I can just pass this out and explain it very quickly. These are the 8 properties we have on today's docket. The first 3 are high-rises that were built by the same builder in 1978. And my suggestion is we carry forward the arguments for the first one, which would be 299, to the next 2.
Okay.
And then the final 3 are the same owner, same builder, they built them, but these are independent living. So they have another element to them, which is a business element that's incorporated in there. But the way the city handles it is they take out the business element, they assume it operates like an apartment. So we have the same argument on the last 3 as we have on the first.
Okay, well, why don't we deal with it this way? We'll deal with the Queen Street property first.
Yeah, and you see.
And then you can do it when you want to Kensington and Grant Avenue, that anything that is said in the first application will be brought forward and we'll consider as soon as we repeat it.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
Mr. Wong, that's fine with you? And on your behalf too, you can, anything you respond to will carry forward when we consider the others then.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if the question's asked on one, it's asked on all 3 of them then.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
I still might prefer to, I guess, go through everything.
Well, absolutely, we want you to do that.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
dealing
yeah.
them separately. Just, I'm just talking about the arguments and the questions. There's no
Sure,
point,
sure.
if they're all the same, to ask the same questions in all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Because we'll consider the question asked and answered.
Yeah.
Okay? So 299 Queen Street, you can proceed when you're ready, Mr. Wong.
Sure. The subject property is 299 Queen Street. The roll number is 070-005-877-00. It's a residential apartment block that's 11 stories high. It was built in 1978. We have an effective year built in 1988. There are 167 suites with 169 outdoor parking stalls. page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,148 to get a potential income of $2,274,000. We use the 2.6% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $2,215,000. And we use the 46% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $1,184,000. Capped at 5%, we have an estimated market value of $23,698,000. It works out to approximately $142,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents that we've used are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. If you look on the bottom small chart, to do a quick estimate of the operating income, use their 2017 income of $2,150,000 and average their expenses from 2015 to 2017 at $941,000, giving a NOI of $1,208,000, which is a little bit higher than what the model is estimated at $1,184,000. I believe the actual performance that supports the model. On page 6 is information on how we derive our cap rates. Our cap rates range from 4% to 7.3%, with the majority of them ranging from 4.9% to 5.3%. On page 7 are some sales, are some cap rate sales. It's going to go through the top part of it. It's like following our sample of actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose for showing these individual capitalization rates is to illustrate the accuracy of our model and substantiate the model-derived cap rates. They are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property. Net operating income has been developed through stabilizing the owner reported income and expense information. Capitalization rates have been derived from dividing the property's net operating income by its sale price. So for the multifamily, there's some examples of cap rates for multifamily properties. On page 8 are relevant excerpts from the Municipal Assessment Act. On page 9 are some pictures of the subject property with its location. Page 10 are some pictures of the subject property from the internet. Page 11. To the end of the brief are the income and expenses submitted by the owner. If you look on page 13, near the middle of the page, there's a special and major repairs item of $80,333. I'm not sure, but I think there's some possibility that that expense might be capital in nature.
Can I just tell me what line you're on here, Squire?
It's kind of right in the middle of the page. It says special major repairs.
Which okay.
On page 13.
Yeah,
13.
okay, I've got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm not sure, but it's possible it might be capital in nature. The summary that I put on my page 5 included all the numbers. So if you exclude that, then the operating income might be a little bit higher. The actual performance of the subject property supports the model, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $23,699,000.
Thank you. Any questions in the assessor, Mr. Story?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Mr. Wong, did you have an opportunity to inspect the facility, the property?
No,
Oh, okay. Let's cut to the quick. Let's go to page 7. So what has happened is the city has looked at the reporting agencies, Colliers, CBRE, Cushman, Wakefield, etc., and then developed for just recently.
Are you asking a question or are you making a statement?
Yeah, ask a question.
Okay, because before you was a statement, maybe you should ask us a question.
Okay. The 4 sales you gave us is to substantiate the 5% cap rate. Is that correct?
it's to substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates.
Of 5%.
Well, they range from 4 to 7.3.
But for this assessment, you used 5% for the subject.
The capitalization rates that we presented, they're not meant to be comparable to specific subject properties.
That's how you value the property, using 5%.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yes. or no?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then, did you get an opportunity to visit any of the 4 properties you've used on page 7? Everybody see on page 7, second from the bottom?
Yeah, we're talking about the 4 multifamily that
Yes,
is on
that's
page 7,
it.
yes.
You got it, okay? That's what I'm referring to right at the moment. So the city has introduced this, first time I've seen it, looking at specific properties. Did you have an opportunity to go and visit any of these properties?
I have not.
So you don't know if they compare or don't compare to the subject?
They are there as an example. They're not absolutely meant to be compared to the subject.
Okay. And just going to page 10, a couple of things jump out. You can see that there are significant balconies on the subject property. Page 10, top picture. Yes, no?
Yeah.
Okay. And at the bottom, the 4 pictures, they reflect a typical suite in your, while you weren't there. Somebody took the pictures from the city?
No, it's from the internet, the ashburyplace.ca website.
It's from the website.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're not, that would be the condition of the suites.
These are just what the their website is indicating.
And are you aware of any change in the makeup of the tenants of this building?
No.
Are you aware that a certain number of suites are handicapped suites?
No.
Are you aware that there's a seniors association, homeowners association, as it's recognized in this building?
No. I am aware of the income and expenses though.
Okay. And just getting back to the infamous page 7 again, if we could. Do you know if 191 Roche is a condominium conversion?
I'm not sure.
Do you know if 191 Roche was purchased with the intent to significantly renovate to increase rents? Do you have any knowledge in 191 Roche?
I have not analyzed that property.
Okay, but you're not aware whether there was a planned massive renovation or if it was condominiumized, to be condominiumized? You don't know?
I believe some of the properties were purchased and renovated afterwards. It doesn't disqualify them as a valid cap rate sale because the municipal board has said as so much.
But you understand that if somebody buys it, they get a waiver they get an exemption from rent controls based on the magnitude of the redevelopment. You're aware of that?
I believe that's to be true. Yes.
So there's another opportunity if you buy a property with a pending major renovation or about to be condominiumized that may or may not distort cap rate. Is that a fair comment?
That may or may not what?
Distort cap rate. Sorry, I've got a cold, so
Yeah.
hard to speak.
These are the cap rates at the
They reported the sale, right?
based on the sale.
Yeah. Okay. Same questions for 394 Talbot. Is 394 Talbot, are you aware, was it purchased for purposes of condominium conversion?
I believe, as far as I know, I don't believe any of them were converted to condos. As far as I know, some of them were renovated, and but these are the cap rates that were yielded based off of their stabilized income against their sale price.
Okay. But if it were purchased or optioned to purchase, subject to selling it out first as a condo, you would discount, you treat the cap rate differently because there's other elements, there's a business opportunity and almost an immediate return. So you would your system pick that up or not?
I'm not sure if.
You know, Mr. Story, I see your argument, and certainly you can maintain it as an argument. I don't think that Mr. Wong is able to ask him these questions.
He doesn't know
He knows
about-
nothing about these properties.
Okay, I just
He
wanted
knows
to
them
make, I
before-
want to make the board familiar, it's very important.
No, I understand that, and we're familiar with it, and we also are aware of the fact that this is a new page that I hadn't seen
Yes,
before
it is. It's
either.
brand new.
And it's to show that the cap rates that the city's using, I guess, to try to show that they're reasonable, and you certainly have every right
Yes.
to attack it.
Yes.
But I think
Well, I'm not attacking it, I just want clarification. More to the board
yeah,
than me.
I don't think Mr. Wong is able to, so I think
Okay.
we'll let you make a summation. Certainly you
Okay.
can put forward an argument on that
I
basis.
shall.
Okay.
333 Ward is quite different than any of the other three because it was a relatively new property built in 206, that there was confusion over the cap rate from last year. Do you have information on 333 Ward, what happened there?
I'm reasonably familiar with it.
Okay, so you're aware that the city thought that the purchasers had paid 18,820,000 as opposed to 18 million? Are you familiar with that?
I don't know. I don't think that's what the city thought at all.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where you're getting that from.
Where did the city get the 5% cap rate in your opinion?
It was our analysis of the income and expenses against the $18 million sale price.
Okay, so it doesn't, okay, we'll do it in the bottom. Thank you. And you're aware that this building was built in 1978 and has an effective age of 1988, correct?
Yes.
And in your opinion, is that the difference, is it because of a renovation that was done, a rehabilitation?
Normally when we make adjustments to the effective year built, it is due to renovations.
Renovations, okay. And they have to be significant, substantial, do you know?
Sure.
Okay. Do you, I don't know if the city would show this, but in 2007 to 2008, under agreement with the rentalsman, they went into a rehabilitation program that cost $1,739,132. Do your field forms reflect that? What renovations have
I
happened?
mean, it would make sense as to why the effective age is different.
Okay. You don't have that number?
I don't believe.
Okay.
I don't believe so.
And in looking at our brief and your brief, you understand the only issue we have of disagreement is the cap rate?
Appears to be the case.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Steding, do you have any questions of the assessor?
We touched on it, but you're saying that the property was built in 1978 and effective date. Do you know what renovations or work permits taken out for any specific amount of money? And at what point were those renovations completed? Did you look up that?
I don't believe we have any information on that. I'm looking at the notes and I don't believe there's any mention of it, but I might be just missing it. The applicant has indicated, 1.7 million, so I have no reason to question that. It would make, like I said, it would make sense that that's why the effective year built on our property record is different than the actual year built.
And I guess the other minor one too is, we touched on the expenses. And we touched on well, very heavy, let's put it that way. Did you look to see if you mentioned that it could be a capital expense?
Yeah.
Did you check to see if that was in fact what went on?
No, I did not inquire, but even including the expenses, the operating income, it does support where the model is at, something, I just wanted to make mention of it as there's a possibility that might be capital.
Yeah. Possibility.
Yeah, just the way that it's labeled.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchins, any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Wong, on page 1, number of suites 167. On page 11, number of parking spots 167. And yet the workup is based on 165 units. Is there a reason for that discrepancy, or do you know why we're missing the 2 suites, or is the 165 an accurate count?
I would put all my weight on the 165.
Okay.
And
Okay.
the number of suites is sort of taken from a different part of our system, which they're not. They should be linked together, but they're not. And so it's possible that the numbers might have changed.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So excuse me, you say 165, 155?
165.
165, that's what, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Page 3.
Yeah, we got discrepancy.
Yeah, no,
You're on the lower side of actuals, but you're saying that your workup, in your opinion, at 165 is correct, as far as you know. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. No, I would. That is what the value is based off of,
Yeah.
and.
Okay. Okay, and let's go to page 7. As the chair mentioned, or the opponent, that's the first time we've seen actual examples of cap rate sampling, I guess. Is this a new policy for the department? That all assessors are gonna be presenting this, do you think?
Yes, going forward.
Okay, yeah. And so the relevance for you today is the multifamily ones on the page. The average seems to be about approximately 4.5%. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's right around there.
Now, I note that these are all, how would I question this? Did you pick these for, or is this going to be a standardized presentation?
This will
for
be standardized.
Okay.
Yeah, the purpose of them is to show that the individual capitalization rates. Showing it is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived cap rates. That's what it's there.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, as far as you know, I know the modelers developed this cap rates, I guess, but were these all open market listed sales?
Yes, these are bona fide sales,
Okay.
and we derive the cap rates through stabilizing the owner reported income and expense information.
Yeah, so, these apartment blocks would have been, listed by an agent. And they're bona fide, I guess you bona fide them, and whoever bought them, paid that price, no matter what their development plans were, I guess. Is that fair?
Well, sort of speaking towards that, like it's difficult to know what was in the mind of the purchaser.
Yeah.
The things that we do know are, what the operating income was and what it sold for.
Mhm.
Those are the things that we know for sure. With
Yeah.
regards to what's on the mind of the developer, I mean, we could sit here all day and try and not be guess and not be right.
Yeah.
And the municipal board has spoke on such topics as, if a property was sold maybe for the purpose of renovation, that it doesn't automatically disqualify that property as a cap rate sale. And it's been mentioned a few times at the municipal board with at least, I would say, 3 decisions that state something similar. And so we feel that the cap rates that we've presented are representative of the market, and we also feel that it is accurate in estimating the market value for the properties in Winnipeg for assessment purposes.
Okay. That's my only questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm also going to page 7, because it's a new piece of evidence and it's helpful, and so I thank you for it, but at the same time, it doesn't tell us as much information as I have some questions. So basically, then I see that there are sales that took place in 2016, 17, and 18. They're not time adjusted, but I guess you wouldn't for, for a commercial property, because the rents don't go up by nothing. But they do on an annual basis, perhaps. But so you got 4 different cap rates, and as Mr. Hutchings pointed out, they probably average about 4.5%. Are these the only 4 multifamily that sold in the city of Winnipeg in that time span, or are there others?
There are others,
Okay.
and from what I've seen, they do represent the range that we've put on page 6, which is from 4 to 7.3%.
Okay. And the others, you're saying, are these cherry picked to substantiate the type of cap rate that you're trying to show us is reasonable, or are there others that are higher, for example, that you aren't showing us?
There are others that are higher.
Right.
We just wanted to give you an idea. We just wanted to substantiate the accuracy of the model by providing these. I guess we could put more, but I mean, we could put 20.
Yeah, no, I understand the fairness, like it looks to me when I see 4, they
Yeah.
all, they might be cherry picked to establish a conclusion that you want us to conclude.
I will guarantee you that there are cap rates in the 5.5%, 6%, and 7%.
Okay, for similar type of buildings?
The types of buildings, they do range, but the smaller buildings we see are kind of getting the lower cap rates.
Okay. And I'm looking at these 4 examples you gave us. Which one of them do you think best is comparable to the subject property?
333 Ward, not in the sense of age, but in the sense of investment grade type property.
Okay. And that came out at a 5% cap rate, so you think that somebody who's buying another building that's built in 1970, even though it's been having some renovations and maybe bring it to what the city's model since 1988, don't you think that person who's buying that older building, who's going to have to make some expenditures to maintain it, more so than a new building, might be looking for a higher cap rate when they acquire it?
I think that that line of thinking does make sense, when looking at the appraisal for this property, some of the buildings, they were older, and they did come in at 5%. So when you think from maybe a theoretical point of view, it makes sense that the cap rate should be a little bit higher. But from the information that I've seen with similar investment grade type properties, like larger properties, they supported a cap rate. They were used in supporting a cap rate of 5%.
Okay, so you feel comfortable with the 5%?
Yeah, I've seen a reasonable number of sales, like and the appraisal for 333 Ward, and they used a 5% cap, and it was based off of sales of sometimes off of properties that were maybe the same vintage as the subject property, and that's how they established the 5%. So it wasn't just like 2000 and newer properties that were used to establish that cap rate. It was older, larger buildings as well.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Wong. Okay, Mr. Story.
In the last sentence, 3 times you mentioned the appraisal on Ward, 333 Ward. Have you in fact seen the appraisal on 330 Ward?
Yeah.
I think, actually, I think your questions, if you wanted to ask some of the questions, you'd ask me if it was okay to do so. You're finished asking questions right now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you...
No, I said it's your turn to make an argument now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You ask your questions first of all.
Well, I was going to add, may I have a question that came out of cross-examination?
Okay, so you'd like to ask a question that came out of cross-examination?
Yes,
I'll let you ask it.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, Mr. Wong, you have seen the appraisal, and the appraisal was written for who? Who is it addressed to?
I don't recall.
And what was the reason for the appraisal? You're sure you've seen it?
I assure you, I have seen it.
And it has an appraised value of $18,820,000, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that appraisal was done in January of 2015, is that correct?
I'm not sure.
And the property was sold in 2016, a year later, is that correct?
I'm assuming that the appraisal was done for the purpose of purchasing the property.
But you don't know that? You don't know for sure?
I don't know for sure.
Okay, Mr. Story, you can go ahead with your evidence.
Okay, I'll just ask a quick question. Okay. I think because we're talking, I might as well do the rebuttal. There's one argument. Shall I do the rebuttal right off the bat? Is that the board, Mr. Chair?
You can cancel the case the way you would like to do so. So I'm not going to
So I
tell you
do that. I
what to
do
do.
the rebuttal. I've got also, if it's okay with Mr. Wong, I brought pictures of the 4 properties because I sensed that the city wouldn't give it, and I don't know how you could possibly make a decision if you didn't know what they looked like. So is it okay if I pass out in rebuttal, the pictures of the 4 properties?
You absolutely can. I think that we have those. Thank you.
Thank you. And in cross-examination, a lot of information came out on the rehabilitation costs. And I have in rebuttal the rehabilitation costs on 299.3 at $1,739,000. Rather than put that, I'll hold that until I do the speech on it. If you need to see it, you're welcome to, or you can have it now. I'll pass it.
It's your case, you handle it the way you want it.
Pardon me?
I said you handle it the way you want it.
Yeah. And just housekeeping, I can clean up to start with the question about the number of suites. If you remember in my first dissertation, I mentioned that there's a seniors association in the building, and the seniors have formed an association recognized by the rentalsmen that allows them to represent their board, to represent all the tenants. But most importantly, they required that the landlord turn over 2 suites as a gathering room for the seniors. So there is 167 suites. as you come in the front door, the first 2 suites are used for the seniors' gathering place, it's main floor, and they don't pay rent, and that's part of the agreement. So there are 165.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that would make perfect sense in that we originally had it at 167.
Yeah.
They said, hey,
Oh, that's fine, that's
we're
an
not doing this.
explanation, we'll do that. That's fine.
And then just for, then Mr. Wong was also questioning an expenditure in the more recent financial statements. That was as a result of there was a handicap component, 25 suites were built for handicapped folks, and there's another 15 suites for people with mild disabilities. And based on budget cuts, they're not funded anymore, and those tenants are gone, and the suites have to be converted to traditional suites from handicap.
So they were capital.
Pardon me?
So they were capital.
Yeah, you
Okay,
asked, no,
okay.
you were saying there's special,
Yeah.
you read the financial statement, showed they keep a
You
special.
know, since you're learning about NOI, I don't know if this all matters anyway.
It doesn't really
Yeah,
matter,
it's,
except everything, yeah. But I wanted you to understand the building. Okay. I'll just go through our brief very quickly, and then we'll move to the rebuttal. If you just check, you see the front page, and this becomes very important. This particular building, again, was built in 1979, and it was built by the Martins family, who at the same time built 690 Kenistons, almost an identical building. And these buildings in those days had great big full balconies. All the apartments had full balconies.
Sorry, where are we? I'm sorry.
Just on the front page of our brief, just look at the picture.
Oh, the original,
Okay,
okay,
yeah, the main argument.
okay.
Okay, so you can see the balconies. And what happened is, when they built the building, they put in a capital replacement budget that in 25 years they would have to replace the balconies. And in fact, they did almost 25 years later. And they, after replacing them once, the next time should be 15 years from now. But these balconies have to be built differently, as do all these type of balconies in the city of Winnipeg. The reason is that the water's now, the way they're built in those days, they're built to drain the water to the side of the balcony and then down the building. And now what's happened is caused corrosion where the 2 suites meet. So it has to be redone, and it's planned in the next 5 years. And I want to say that just the challenges of these older buildings, because cap rate is derived in multi-tenants for basically 3 reasons. One is age is a big influence, because age also gives you, God forbid, functional obsolescence. Older buildings don't necessarily meet contemporary demand. This building doesn't have a gymnasium, it doesn't have a pool. That's not what they're building in 1978, they're building them now. So that's an important element. You're going to see 690 Keniston is exactly the same. So these buildings are subject to required rehabilitation because of the very nature of the construction. You'll see that in the various properties that the city has provided, none of them have balconies. You'll also find, if you do some research on it, that there are some developers that steer clear of apartment buildings if they have balconies because of the liability and the inherent risk and the financial risk, because they have to maintain them. If you go to page 5 of our brief, you'll see that we're agreeing with the assessor on the rent potential. We're agreeing on the vacancy. We did our own analysis of cost expense ratio, and we're accepting it. And the assessor is suggesting a 5% cap rate, when the overwhelming response from the investment community, Colliers, Cushman's, Stevenson, everybody else, is 6%. So our position is 6%. The next pages will show you the city's build-up. There's an overview. We all know this building. You didn't know you knew it, but for the last 20-some years, it says ho-ho on the building. Everybody knows about that. As you drive across down Route 90, you see it. It's right in the corner of Ness and Route 90. It's a 14-story building, and built again in 1978. Some more overviews just to give you location. Here are some rates, and you'll see the disagreement with 333 Ward. That's the property we talked about before. We also have 403 St. Anne's. We also have 45 Hargrave. We also have 1,000 Archibald and 650 Stafford. And these are the cap rates that were used in our analysis. But more importantly, we relied on the Colliers, because the Colliers who seem to be experts in this field right across Canada.
Sorry, Mrs. Story, I have no idea where you're reading from.
Oh.
Are we in the original brief or the
Yes,
Bible,
original
or?
brief, after the pictures. I'm on page 15.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe we can go through it again quickly. You got it? And 330 Ward, the appraisal on 330 Ward, just to go through it quickly, is 18,820,000. It wasn't 18 million. The appraisal was 18,820,000. When Marwest decided to buy it, a year after they were first introduced to the property by Colliers, the most that they would pay based on their own due diligence was 18 million, and that's what they paid. The city, unfortunately, carried forward the appraised value of 18,820,000.
I'd like to object to that.
Okay.
He's trying to say how we did it, and that's not how we did it.
Okay.
So you always ask questions after,
Oh.
not to check now.
Okay.
No, let-
So in any case, our interpretation after interviewing, first of all, the purchaser wasn't party to the appraisal. The appraisal was done because of a shareholder's disagreement on the previous owner of the property. But I will get to it in more detail because I have the appraisal. And we can go through that. So getting back to this, again, year built is important. Check the years here. Ward is 206. It's a wood frame building, by the way. It's it also is a crawl space, and it is not necessarily the highest of grade construction, and that's Ward at 5.44. 403 St. Anne's is 5.57. It was built in 1966. It's 14 suites. 45 Hargrave, built in 1959. It's 34 suites, 2.5 floors. 1,000 Archibald, built in 64, 22 suites. And 650 Stafford, built in 1968, with 26 units and a cap rate of 6.65. And one wonders, Mr. Chair asked the assessor, were there any sales at higher rates? And the assessor agreed that there were. And one has to wonder why the assessor wouldn't have considered any of these properties, but they didn't apparently. So that creates a median of 5.65%. If you go to the next page, which is 17, this board has seen this time and time again, but the second box from the bottom, multifamily, shows the high for high rise, and these would be in the high risk because of the nature of construction and the age, is 6%. And the low rise high is 6%. And again, the low rise are not what we're talking about are the 3 high rises at this point. So the 6% is pretty definite as to what it is. These folks have very detailed gathering information on these cap rates across the country. We rely on them. The city relies on them. As a matter of fact, last year, as I recall, the city only used Colliers cap rates.
We don't rely on Colliers cap rates. That would be another.
Okay, again, you can
Okay.
ask questions on it. Let Mr.
Okay.
Mr. make his presentation.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
And then if you look at the next page 19, this is 299 Queen, and for the previous cycle, the cap rate used by this board was 5.5%. And then if you go into the page 23, again you'll see cap rates, Colliers 6%, multi-tenant, low rise. multi-tenant high-rise 6%. It's overwhelmingly 6%. And then I would just like to, if I may, go into the rebuttal brief I handed you. We'll start, if we can, by looking at the,
Before doing so, maybe since, I think maybe we should ask questions on your main presentation and you can rebut after.
okay,
Okay.
sure.
Okay, you had a couple of things you wanted to ask questions about, Mr. Wong?
Well, maybe not necessarily ask questions, but just sort of stating that we use Colliers to.
Okay, well, you can make an argument then. If you have questions, you can ask them.
Okay. So just questions for now?
For now.
Yeah. Based on your page 5, your cap rate study is indicating potential cap rate of 5.65, but you're using 6.
The city is using 5 and we're using 7, correct?
Your cap rate study is indicating 5.65 and you're using 6. Why are you using?
Because this is the city's position. That's the assessor on the left side. That's your
I'm not
position.
talking about the assessors, I'm
And
talking
we're
about.
agreeing to that other than we think the property should be it. Because that's what's sold for 5 and change. You're getting mixed up.
Mr. Story, I think he's referring to page number 15, where you're showing Fairfax Realty applicants, multi-tenant cap study.
Yeah, but those, because that's.
Those are your figures, because you're showing them to Fairfax Realty.
But the cap rates are the sale, those are sales.
For
We
sure.
didn't generate those, we
I know, and
reported
Mr.
them.
Wong's asked you a question about that. He's
Okay.
asked you about why you're asking for 6
Because that's a sale.
when you've shown somewhere in the 5 range. All these four examples.
The median here is 5.65, and we're suggesting 6 is appropriate for the subject, because 5.65 includes buildings, including Ward, which are 206, some newer buildings. It's the entire portfolio of multi-tenant residential. And this is the rates provided on 15 are actual sales. And that's why they're used.
Yeah, I was just wondering why, you were indicating 5.65, but you're using 6. That's what I was wondering.
Because 5.65 on the median were actual sales. They're actual sales. 6 came from Collier's report.
Okay, so you're kind of relying more on Collier's report.
I'm looking at the sales as well. Really looking at the sales, which we'll get into.
Yeah. That would be all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Judge, any questions?
Oh, yes, thank you,
Yeah,
Mr. Chair. Mr. Story, page 15, the cap rate study. All the properties you used, they're all low-rise, is that right?
Yes, you can tell the number of stories,
Yeah,
and they're all low-rise, correct?
okay.
And this was actually, I believe, yes. Yeah.
Okay, and you also made a comment that number 1333 Ward was inferior in construction because it's wood?
Inferior to hollow core or concrete
Okay.
slab. It's
So-
inferior. It's a cheaper way to do the basements, but it invites mold, because there's a prospect.
Okay, so if it's sold with that inferior construction
Mhm.
at 5.44%, would it not mean that the subject property is superior and would warrant a lower cap rate?
No, the Ward is relatively new. It's a 2006 property.
Right?
So that in itself, in terms of cap rate, what really the main elements are age, location, condition. So age becomes important. Why is age important? Because if you got a building that's built in 1978, it may have some functional obsolescence.
I understand
It
that.
may not meet.
But my question was,
Is it inferior?
you said it was inferior.
Well, inferior construction to the 2 others which have basements. It doesn't have a basement.
But I thought you said it was inferior to the subject property.
Well, it's not inferior because of age. It's inferior because of its wood frame.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
inferior
It's
to the
wood
subject
frame,
property.
and wood frame with crawl space invites mold
Okay.
and maintenance.
Okay, now, in your experience, using low-rise in comparison to a high-rise, which would demand a lower cap rate? How would you?
I would think an elevated high-rise, I'm just going by experience,
yeah.
would probably be half a point or quarter point less than similar property low rise, I would think. It's just density, it's a matter of density. But with that, with elevators come more costs, with balconies come more costs, with pools and tennis courts come more costs.
All right, that's my only questions on this part. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vincent. Mr. Stenning, do you have any questions?
You mentioned balconies, and you kind of brought them up as a detriment. That be what you're saying?
Not necessarily. What happens is they are risk. There's a financial risk and a liability risk with balconies. You're seeing less of them. None of the properties in the assessors 3 or 4 even have balconies, but the subjects do.
Well,
So, and there are some developers that may or may not buy. The report we have is that they may not buy if they're balcony, because every 15 years they have to be rehabbed.
okay,
To reseal them.
I don't want to cut you off, but I do drive around the city, and I would say every apartment block that's being built will have balconies today, unless I'm blind. Now, I don't want to be rude, but
Well, 206, we got a current one, right in your pictures, 206 Ward is relatively new. It's probably the newest one that's sold, and it's no balconies.
Ward
Ward, yeah, 333
didn't have
Ward.
balcony.
No, there's no balcony.
That's correct, we had it the other day.
Yeah, I got pictures here of it.
Yeah, I don't need it,
Yeah.
it's okay.
So
would you-
balconies, what Mr. Stenning, what happens is when they build a building, they can do the power coating and everything with the rails and install them. And that should last for about 25 years, which did in this case. They rebuilt them in early 2000. And then every 15 years, they have to be taken down, cleaned, painted, done,
Okay.
reseal everything. So
Okay.
they have an ongoing maintenance. You know, if you own a building with balconies, every 15 years or so, you're gonna have to do major work.
Okay. I have asked the question to other appellants than your chair. Is it better to have a balcony or not? Is it, you get a better rent if you have and I've always been told, yes, it has. But let's skip aside that.
Well,
Even
maybe,
if
I don't know that for a fact, but
Okay.
maybe. I know, can I tell you my experience? I've lived in lots of apartment buildings. I've never lived in one with a balcony. I'm afraid of heights. I wouldn't go out on it. That's just me.
Okay,
So I don't know. I can't answer that.
no,
I mean, you,
it's a simple question.
Yeah.
I didn't want to
yeah.
get into it. They're building with balconies.
And these, Mr. Stenning, these are quite unique balconies. These are the full length of the suite. They're right across the suite, if you have a look at the pictures. And the water, the floors were built.
Okay, let me cut a little bit and ask the question. Do they build a reserve to do this work at some point?
Yes, they do. And the way they do it, this is a limited partnership. And they do it with what they call restricted funds. So they know that 5 years from now, they're already working towards earmarking a certain amount of money out of NOI to be there to replace the balconies and refurbish them, have them in 5 years. Yes,
Do
they do.
you have an estimate on what the balconies will cost to replace in that?
Well, they're going to be in excess of $1 million. So their budget's now running from 1.3 to 1.5 million. It all depends how much they do. That's,
Okay.
that's,
Let's change the subject a bit. You've got a very high expense for that particular year, thinking about $80,000, is that correct?
they capitalize it, there's no expense.
That's
They
about
capitalize it.
$500 a suite in 1 year. So would you
10,
say
5
that,
years from now.
would you say they're upgrading all the time to make their, that?
No, but you know that if you're a conscientious, you remember, the Martins family built this building and they still own it. There's only been one owner for all these years. And the building is maintained impeccably. It's beautiful in terms of maintenance. It's still dated because it's 1978. We all get dated. But it's well maintained. But people know buying that building that every 10, 15 years you're going to have to re-secure the balconies that will fall off. And these are conscientious.
I don't want any more questions.
Okay.
I'm done.
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna take you back again, though, to your study. And this, I just always point out, you're using low rise and comparing the
Yes.
cap rate to a high rise, but you already admitted that maybe if you lose a quarter point because.
Only because of density, yeah.
Yeah. The only, I'm also looking at the fact that the properties are dated that you're using too.
Probably would.
They're all 1950s, 1960s, except for the Ward property. So that, so again, that would infer a higher cap rate because
Yes,
of the
age is a
right?
huge issue.
And even with that, and they're also low rise, so, not low rise, and also small buildings.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a situation like a 14 suite, you can't really have a caretaker, or if you do, it's gonna be a huge expense on the ratio.
Yeah.
And the highest other one is 34 suites, which doesn't really come in comparison to the subject property. Because again, it can't be managed nearly as efficiently, because it's smaller.
Correct.
So again, I think that would dictate a higher cap rate on a person buying it, because they can't concentrate their ownership, and it's gonna be less efficient to operate.
What has happened in the last 5 to 6 years in Winnipeg is small investors, because interest rates were low at the bank,
Yeah.
earnings, small investors were grouping together and buying small apartment buildings. Yeah, you must see that here. There's a different type of investor in the smaller apartments. And because of that, rates were driven up because more people have the capability of buying a small apartment.
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily work that way.
Okay,
But,
you answered my question, that's fine, okay. Now, the next thing is, Mr. Wong pointed out, your median is 5.65, but that's really not very reflective, because the median is not really fair. You should really take all the suites, and, because a smaller building would affect the median, wouldn't affect the average rent, or the average cap rate, I mean, the same way.
Well, this is a median of the
Yeah,
cap rates.
I understand.
That were reported, so.
I understand, but if you're looking at a 14-suite building with a higher cap rate, and you're using the median, it has a higher proportionate effect on choosing the median than the average cap rate per suite would.
I don't follow that.
Well, if you took all the suites
Yes.
and added them all up, and you took the cap rates,
What would you add up the
and
value?
then, yeah, and then divided by the cap
The value
rate,
per suite.
yeah, you find the cap rate per suite, which would be more indicative of that.
You may be right.
Okay, now I'm looking at, you gave a copy of the board revision order, and I don't follow one thing. I said there's 2 income streams on it,
Just two which?
income streams on it. It shows, that one was an assessment for the big one for 21,497 reduced from the original. What's the second stream of 20,
No, there's only one stream.
oh, I see what it is.
It's all we did.
I see what it is, okay.
This is the subject last year.
Absolutely, okay, you know what, forget that question, I misread.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
And last year was reduced, the assessment was reduced because the cap rate was bumped to
Right.
5.5.
So they reduced it to 20,500. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
No more questions. You can do your rebuttals now if you wish.
Oh, I passed over.
You did.
Okay, and this I did for the board, I'll leave it, you've got the main pictures in the rebuttal, but this is the ward appraisal that we talked about. So I'll leave it here if you want to see the whole thing. I didn't print it all because it's 160 pages. May I get a bit of water?
Go ahead.
I'll study it tonight while I'm
Yeah.
watching
I know, yeah.
The first thing, just kind of for interest only, let's have a look if we can at the 4 properties that the city introduced specific
Okay,
cap rates for. First one is 191 Roche. And it's on page, mine's page 4, I didn't read it. 191 Roche, it's a blue building. Have you got it, gentlemen?
we do.
This one here. It's 191 Roach, it's, Mr. Stenning, you okay?
I'm fine. I got everything.
Okay. And you see not only are there doesn't appear to be balconies in that building, but we don't have all sides of it. But that is one of the comps used by the city. And just want to get some detail on it. And then if you flip that page, one behind it is 333 Ward. That's the one that was used repeatedly. It's page 5.
Which shows some balconies,
Yes.
because you said there weren't any.
Well, these are the same. These are full-length balconies because these are balconies, correct? They're not very big.
They're
I don't
small
know what you
buildings.
do on them, but they're there. Yes, but that was built in 206, but that's 333 Ward. It's the one that we have an appraisal for here today. The first one, if you flip the page, is Talbot. Is 394 Talbot. And I was by this building, and I can tell you, it doesn't have balconies. And you've
That's the one you lived in, right?
got one of them. I've been
Sorry.
everywhere. And then 285 Maxwell, you can see it. So those are the 4 buildings, so you know, those are the 4 buildings, 3 of which were older buildings, and one was introduced that's much newer, which is Ward, and it has some confusion over the sale. And then if we go to the document that says rebuttal evidence, common to all briefs. Now we've shown you the cap rate. We've shown you the pictures of the subject properties that were used in the cap rate study. 191 Roche is one of them. And we are going to show you before the end of this brief that it is our belief that it was purchased with the intention to renovate. And again, getting back to that, the intention to renovate can be an opportunity because you apply to get your freeze on your rent control, and then you can, based on the amount that you're prepared to spend, you're allowed to increase your rents at the end of the renovation. So it gets money if a purchase has either a conversion, condo conversion, or a renovation opportunity. We believe that one had a major intent to renovate. I'll show you. Similarly, 394, 285 Maxwell, we actually have documentation that the renovation contemplated was $413,000, and that has happened. And then municipal board order I've attached at A18431 suggests that we put appropriate weight on developing cap rates when there are these external influences. The external influences, there may be another investment opportunity. People will buy a property by putting an option on it until such time as they do 65% sale to be able to convert to a condo. So that's not the right cap rate used to support the purchase necessarily, because it's the purchase plus the opportunity that comes with the purchase. Ward is confusing, and I'm going to just share a couple of things with you. It's on or about February 15th, Collier's commercial agents presented Marwest Management with an opportunity to purchase 333 Ward for $18,820,000 based on an appraisal dated January 20th, 2015. So they had an appraisal done, and the appraisal, if you go to page 21 of the brief, you'll see that none of the people, the purchaser, the agents, none of them are mentioned. This is a Hofer Wilkinson appraisal that was done, and the purpose for the appraisal excuse me for a minute. Yes, if you look at the paragraph Mr. Chair and board members, under the line, it says, in accordance with our instructions, we have inspected and appraised the above referenced property, that's 333 Ward. The purpose of this appraisal, as instructed, is to estimate the market value of the subject property for compliance with shareholders' agreement requirements. So there's a shareholders' agreement that gave rise to this. It wasn't necessarily for sale, although it might have been. The effective date of the report is January 20th, 2015. If you flip back to the assessor's brief, you'll see that the sale occurred in 2016, a year later. A sale did occur a year later. And it was, let's go back here.
18 million.
Pardon me?
It was 18 million.
Yes.
Yes.
No, the appraisal was 18,820,000.
No, the sale was at 18 million.
Sale was at 18 million, yeah. And what happened is the NOI was accepted by the purchaser, the $940,000 NOI that was developed in the appraisal to generate that cap rate was the one that was used to purchase it a year later. Colliers came back in almost a year later and said, I know you looked at this property a year ago, you didn't want it, it's on the market, are you interested? My clients looked at it, they were prepared to pay $18 million, not 18,820, and the difference of that is the real cap rate. But they had one other adjustment in there, and that is that they made a small adjustment to the NOI. And the small adjustment was that this building, which are all two-bedroom suites, Ward just has two-bedroom suites, I should mention, would have caretaking and management costs of $90,000 a year, and they thought they would be able to recover some additional NOI by sharing with some close properties they also own on Kearsley and Belleville. So the bottom line is that the amount reported by cap rate by the city of 5% is incorrect. If you took the NOI at 940 with the, applied the 5%, pardon me, determined the cap rate would be 5.23%. That's on page 3. So the cap rate was not 5%, it was 5.3, and the owners, in their view, didn't pay that. They paid 5.5 because they thought they had some economies of scale. But all that's reported, and these are not, they bought it off the appraisal that wasn't prepared for them and wasn't prepared for the sale, but was used by the city, we think, because the city had claims to have this appraisal. I don't know where they got it, but they have it. But we question if that's a correct number, and I left the appraisal with you. We can go to, if you can just take 1 minute, gentlemen, and go to page 22 of our brief, and you'll see a little 60, which is a Hofer Wilkinson appraisal. And this was dated, the appraisal was dated January 20th of 2015, and it was prepared for the shareholders' agreement, disagreement or otherwise. And this shows the apartment with an NOI of $940,864, of which they apply a 5% rate, and that brings it to $18,817,000 rounded to $18,820,000. The actual cap rate at 18 million would be 5.23, not 5%.
Okay.
Just for 1 second, the assessor's brief. And this, I think, to me, is very important. The assessor's brief on page 7 of his brief, he shows that the transaction on Ward, the sale date was the 15th of January 2016. That's a full year after that appraisal was done and it was done for another party and another purpose.
Okay.
So that's Ward. Then we have the 3 properties that I think the chair asked the question earlier, are these really comparable? And look at the properties, look at the location, some positive, some minus, but one would think that there's better reflections of comparable properties in the city of Winnipeg than the 3 that we've been provided with today. Ward is a little bit different, just like North Ward.
Okay.
So let's go back to this.
And that's for calling Mr. Story, because the city's properties were not affected either of such a property.
We're not one?
I said that's fair, because the city's
There-
comparable properties are not reflected either.
Yeah, there has to be, to do comparables properly,
Okay.
you have to do comparable adjustments, what's better,
Okay,
what's
go ahead,
worse.
though.
They don't. If you go to, it'll take you, then I'm gonna leave this decision, but this decision, which is October 29th of 2018, it's the City Assessor 207 Watson, and it speaks here about cap rates, and using cap rates when there's a renovation opportunity, because it may not be a pure real estate sale. And I won't go through the whole, I won't go through verbatim with you, but if you go to page 7, and this is the third paragraph down that's underlined, and this is Mr. DuPont, Henry DuPont from Altus, speaking to making the argument that cap rates determined from the existing income stream of any property purchased with an intention to renovate or convert to condominiums should not be considered. These purchasers do not have the typical motivation, and a cap rate calculation is likely to lower, as it does not consider the post-renovation income model for return on total investment. So the position of this, Mr. DuPont at least on this issue, is that cap rates get skewed if there's other investment opportunity, because you're not just buying the real property and its cash stream, you're buying a business opportunity to condominiumize or. As a matter of fact, the very owners of this building bought Cromwell, one of the next ones we're going to hear, and they bought it only to be able to renovate, because that allowed them to take rates from 600 to 1,000 and keep their crews busy in quieter times. So there's another there can be other motivations as to why you buy real estate. So it's kind of worth to read, I think. And then if you go to page 11, and this is the sale questionnaire, and this is for one of the 3, 191 Roche. And if you look at the bottom, it's a little hard to read, but it says suite upgrades. Their plan was to spend $100,000 on closing, on purchase, and this is reported to the assessment department to upgrade suites. So the next page, you'll see the signatures of the people who provided this information to the city. So their intention appears to be to renovate. They told the city. And again, page 13 is 191, still the assessment department. On the next one, 14, this is a email from property managers at Asteroid Management, and who are explaining that the intention is to renovate through, and we're not involved in this. So their intention was to renovate, and that is Talbot, 384 Talbot. And if you go to page 16, this is telling the world that these suites were totally renovated. I believe this is after the closing of the property, that they're totally renovated suites, including kitchens and bathrooms. I think they quantify that here just a moment. Sorry, I just don't want to miss anything. And then the next one, which is page 17, and it's coming from Acme Management. And the first sentence says, this property was purchased with the intent to renovate. The kitchen and bathrooms were renovated for $413,000. This is reflected on the 218 questionnaire. And I'll ask you to go to the question.
Mr. Story, I was just going to ask you, which property are they referring to though? Oh, is it Maxwell?
This one is Maxwell
Okay.
Place. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm guessing the top, thank you.
Yes, it says under the subject,
Yeah, I see.
285
Okay.
Maxwell Place.
Okay.
And there's a questionnaire on the next page. And this tells you about the property, which they generally ask. And if you go to page 19, they actually sent their financial statement. And if you look at the very bottom, they indicate that $412,790 has been spent on kitchen and bath renovation. So they clearly bought it to renovate. That was in 218. As a matter of fact, in the questionnaire. Yes, in the email back on 17, it says the property was purchased with the intent to renovate the kitchen and bathrooms were renovated for $413,000. This is reflected on 218, and it is. And there's a purchase on the financial statement. So there are the three transactions that support the assessor's cap rate. And none of them should be used for a cap rate study because they have other elements that may or may not affect it. But I think they're significant enough that people buy it because they see an opportunity. And I mentioned earlier, 35 Cromwell, small building, not something that Mar West Management would typically buy because of the small size, because they have management fees and caretakers, etc. But they bought it because they had an opportunity to renovate and move the rents up by virtue of renovation. And they had the capacity to do that work because they had crews that may or may not have been busy at the time. So that's an example that people do buy these properties because they see there's an opportunity there to renovate and adjust them. And I agree that with Mr. DuPont and that there are better pure real estate sales than renos that are going to be condos or renos that have an upside to them. Because that is part of the decision making when you buy it. That's why you pay what you pay. So I'm sorry, I don't want to.
No, yeah, I think you made your point though.
Yeah, okay, fine. And I just want to go back here, and this I think is important because the dates are confusing and I jump around too much and I apologize. But if you go back to, you see page 21, I just want to bring this back. This was Hoffer Wilkinson providing a letter. I don't know any of these people. I know Hoffer Wilkinson, who they are. I don't know the appraiser. Never talked to her. I don't know who the FW, I think that's the Watsky Group. I don't know if they owned it. I guess they must have. But this was to do with a shareholder situation. The gentleman from Colliers thought that Mar West might be interested because they had just bought 229 Kearney and 200 Belleville for renovation purposes, and they're close enough in proximity that you could share a caretaker. So he brought in the appraisal. The appraisal is $18,820,000, and if, at $18,820,000, if somebody were to pay that, they would be paying a 5% cap rate. But if they pay less, they're getting a higher cap.
Yeah. And you already indicated that it was
That's
5.2
what that
price.
is. So that's all I have on Ashbury, which is 299 Queen Street. I do have, which I don't know if you want to see this. Did we pass this one out? This is a working paper from 209. I've done the property check. Did I pass that one out?
Well, is that rebuttal? It was should have been your original evidence you go work out on
No,
the
it
property
was, I
itself.
brought it in just as backup.
Oh, you just want that.
We've passed it out.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So you've got that. You can see that's the restoration of the balconies.
Second.
And it's,
Okay.
just so you know, you've got restoration costs associated with balconies. If you flip the page, the same project was done on 3901 Grant, which is the other high-rise in here. Same owners, same builders, the Martin's family. And you'll see that in 204, the rehabilitation program was approved by the tenancy branch, and it included repointing of the exterior, waterproofing to the curtain wall, engineering, all balconies secured and anchored, waterproof, blah, 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 throughout. So again, balconies need work. And that was a renovation that was supported by the tenancy branch, and then they allowed them to raise rents. Sorry, I won't spend a lot of time on that.
Thank you. Do you have any questions on rebuttal of the applicant?
I have a couple.
Go ahead and ask them.
Actually, but before I forget, because we're kind of going, I would just like to hand out some rebuttal for Mr. Sorry's presentation.
Okay, so you want to rebut his rebuttal?
No.
Oh,
No. I want to rebut his original,
oh,
but we never. I guess we never got to it.
okay.
But I just wanted to hand it out before I forgot, because
Okay,
we have a lot going on here.
okay, that's fine, you can do it. And if we remember, we'll remind you to rebut.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, oh, I need to set a reminder on my phone.
May I have a 2-minute washroom break while we pass it out?
Thank you.
Are we, I think we're almost finished at this point?
Can you got one?
Oh, I
Oh,
guess.
you do it right now?
Yes, I have one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Should I go with mine first?
Well, okay, it's up to you. Are you
Okay.
not asking questions right now of, on the rebuttal?
Okay. Well, maybe.
Because we're really confused, because we start putting your evidence in,
Yeah.
and then we're doing
How about
questions.
I'll ask my questions of his rebuttal,
Right, and we'll ask the questions.
and then yeah, you'll ask your
Perfect,
questions,
perfect.
and then I'll go
Perfect.
through my rebuttal,
Yes.
and then you can ask me.
Questions again,
You can ask me questions about my rebuttal.
as can be, that's.
Is this first page fuzzy or is it my eyes?
Okay, so ask the
I can't
questions.
read it very well. Can't read the numbers.
Okay, ask your questions, Mr. Wong, please. Of the applicant on his rebuttal.
Okay. I mean, I think you were saying that the cap rate sales that we have are maybe not the best, but are they not very similar to the cap rates that you have?
Are they not very similar to the cap rate?
Yeah, are they not?
It's 1 point difference, not significant in an apartment building.
That's not the question that I'm asking.
You said, are the cap rates similar?
No, you're saying that the properties that are in our cap rates area are not very comparable, but are your cap rate properties not exactly the same as ours?
Do you mean the properties under appeal today?
I think I've already asked that question, pointed out.
Yeah, I don't
Oh,
know.
you've already pointed it out?
I
Okay.
think so.
Okay, so
Yes.
it's just.
Because I don't have any new properties, I'm just showing that yours are
I
not.
pointed out,
And we're
so
relying on the.
if you remember that
we're
they were
relying
smaller
on the-
properties
Yeah,
than
yeah.
the subject, that they were from all different parts of the city, and that I didn't think that they were very comparable either, so.
Okay,
If you want to ask the question again, you can, I won't stop you, but I think it's been asked, and I think we already get that.
okay. I guess in the appraisal for 335, what was the cap rate? What was the cap rate used for the appraisal?
For the appraisal at 18 million,
No, what was
Six.
what was the cap rate used for the appraisal?
5%.
Okay. And was that 5% based off of, how many sales was that based off of?
We have to read the appraisal, it's 160 pages.
Okay.
So I think there's about a dozen.
Okay. So it's probably safe to say that those sales support a cap rate of 5%? is why they used 5%?
Oh, with that NOI, yes.
Yeah, okay, okay.
It's all
no.
subject to the NOI.
Okay, so the sales used support a 5% cap rate.
The
Okay,
appraiser, I
okay.
should just clarify here, because you're jumping ahead of yourself. The appraiser who did the appraisal a year before the purchase for another reason had determined that with an,
Okay, no, I think the question was asked, and I think it was answered. The appraisal was tantamount on determining that a 5% cap rate was reasonable, based on whatever is in this.
on that NOI.
Well,
And
it's
a purchase,
matters though,
and a
but-
purchase price of 18,800,000.
No, absolutely, but I'm saying, based on the appraisal itself, they had justification, the appraisal thought, to cap it at 5%, based on the evidence in this, yes, because that's what he used.
Well, I'm not sure they did, because there isn't, the sale is based on, the reason for that appraisal is not to do with the sale.
I understand, but there's information
Something
in
else.
here, it's a long, we're not gonna read it right now.
Sorry,
But
if you
but
go
I
to
think the
page-
question was, and I think the answer has to be, yes, it did determine that a 5% cap rate was reasonable.
Okay. On page 21,
At 18, that's at 18 million. At 18.8, I'm sorry, 18.820, they actually paid 18, they didn't pay 18.8.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I agree with you that a 5.23% cap rate was in fact.
That's correct, yeah.
Yes,
That's correct.
okay, but
And
the
we-
question, that was the question that Mr. Wong asked you.
Well, what he asked, doesn't make, why didn't he answer that question, is okay.
Okay,
That appraisal supports 5.23% based on an $18 million purchase, it's that simple. It doesn't
No,
support
no.
at 18.
That's not
No,
what
the
I
question
asked.
that we asked was,
Yeah.
the appraiser, when he appraised it, not knowing what it was gonna sell for later on, because he didn't even know it was gonna sell for 18 million, he thought it was justified using a 5% cap rate.
Yes.
And an NOI that he determined was the NOI,
Yes,
that a 5% cap rate was reasonable.
yes,
Okay.
that doesn't make it,
I'm not, I know, that was the question he asked.
okay,
We're not going there.
yeah,
Okay.
okay.
so on page 21 of, I guess your thickest, your rebuttal evidence.
Page 21, yeah. Yes,
So it says like the purpose of this appraisal, as instructed, is to estimate the market value of the subject property.
yes,
So that's what the purpose of the appraisal was?
correct.
Okay, okay. So on page 12 of that, it's for 191 Roach.
Mm-hmm. Is that page 12? Yep.
I mean, I guess we have 191 Roach at 4.84%, and on your page 12, the owner says 5%, so is that
Page
correct?
12, notice is 5% capitalization rate, yep.
Okay,
Because
so
they-
that's pretty close, isn't it?
Well, it is, but they're building in the renovation, they're anticipating, the anticipated return to include the cash stream from the building improved by renovations, a higher cash flow. So all I'm suggesting to you is you can't, Ignore that.
That's all.
Yeah, answer the question, that's fine.
Uh,
Don't wanna go through this again. Okay, have you finished asking questions? Do you have any more?
I think I have one more.
Okay, go ahead and ask it.
I guess with regards to renovation sales shouldn't be used. If you go to your page 9. In the middle, in the, just below halfway, like the second paragraph, just below halfway.
starting with respect to supporting, or the board
No,
is compelled?
starting with, the board does not accept any intention to renovate should disqualify a property sale.
Okay, you are aware of what line, I'm sorry, I didn't get to find that one.
It's in the second paragraph,
Second
about halfway
part-
down.
Underlined or no?
It is underlined.
Okay.
It's in the middle of the underlined section.
Yes,
It says, the board does not accept that any intention to renovate should disqualify a property sale. Is that what it says?
yes.
Okay.
That's it?
Uh, Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchins, any questions?
Yes, a follow-up on that one. So, Mr. Story, you spent quite a bit of time detailing what Mr. DuPont was arguing, but as the assessor just pointed out, I guess what we're interested in, the board's decision on the arguments presented. And as the assessor pointed out, that the board does in their written decision say that they do not accept that any intention to renovate should disqualify a property sale. So that's the decision of the board. So the opportunity argument that you're saying is actually disqualified by the board
I
decision.
don't think so, because they also say, and I don't want to interpret what the board is saying, but they talk about in that same paragraph, a renovation must be of significant financial investment on the part of the property owner, one that will cause future rents to substantially increase and should usually involve
I can read, yes,
modification.
yeah.
Yeah, so what they're saying is that if it's significant, it's the same,
Okay,
we typically don't use portfolio purchases.
okay,
We
yeah.
don't do vendor carrybacks.
Okay, but, okay, this is my next question.
Yeah.
So you made a comment about the board, because there's opportunity to develop the property, shouldn't consider that sale, future opportunity, shouldn't consider that sale as representative of a cap rate study.
No, what I meant, I may have said that, I don't know if I did.
Well, you're saying we shouldn't consider this the cap rate.
You
on-
don't know
on
if
these-
that cap rate is a pure cap rate based on income, based on what we're here to do.
Right, okay.
Or if they bought it at a higher cap, at a lower cap rate,
Okay,
because they knew that they were gonna renovate, which they
Okay.
say in this board order.
right.
And if I can, I'm gonna.
No, then you've answered my question, that's okay. My next question is, okay, so you've said that on page 7, the assessor, and you've detailed, the 3 of the 4 sales they don't represent accurate cap rates.
I said that?
You're saying don't accept the sale at
don't know.
191 Roach, you're saying don't accept the sale at Talbot and Maxwell.
Yes, because I'm suggesting,
I know why you're saying it, you don't have to clarify that. You've detailed it, your argument, but my question is, these sales, I think everybody's agreed that they are bona fide sales, that there was a real estate agent involved here, probably on both parties, vendor and seller, who,
you're talking about the city's comparables.
right, that you're
I
saying
don't know
aren't
that there's
valid.
any commercial agents, they would know, I don't know.
Okay, but if you were a vendor and you knew that your property sitting as it's existing had the potential for being redevelopment, would they not increase the price knowing that there are buyers in the market who are gonna pay more because they're buying a shell, they're buying a skeleton of a building that they're gonna renovate and increase their income on it, but doesn't the sale include that future
Well, it would
opportunity?
depend if the purchaser had enough money to do the renovation, rarely do they.
But you're saying we should discount it, and you're saying that the sale doesn't represent an accurate.
I'm saying we
cap
don't
rate.
know if it represents an accurate cap rate based on a pure
Well,
sale.
no, you're saying because they plan to renovate the suites,
Yeah.
that isn't an accurate sale, because they were
It
gonna.
may not be, it may not
It
be.
may
accurate.
not.
We don't know, that's the key. If it's a portfolio sale, you don't accept it. If it's a vendor carryback, you don't accept it.
Okay.
If it's a condo conversion, you don't accept it.
Well, the
If
assessor has
somebody-
stated under oath that these are bona fide sales. They've analyzed the sales to weed out those sales, and he's presenting these 4 sales that are about 4.5%
Right.
cap rate.
Okay, with due respect, are
And
you saying that the assessor told us today, he didn't know enough about the property to speak to it as to
But
what the
he's-
intention of the purchaser was?
But you know as well as me that the department has commercial people that analyze these sales and determine what are gonna be used in the cap rate study. So that means they're using bona fide sales.
Presumably. I
Okay,
don't
okay,
necessarily agree with you, I don't think I have to.
Okay, but,
This is not
but
necessarily.
why
correct.
isn't the opportunity included in that purchase price for future development?
Well, would somebody pay for it? I don't have a toolkit at home, so I can't go and do my own renovation.
Yeah, but
So to
no,
me, it would have no value,
but
but
you're-
to somebody
you're-
else, it would have value.
You're saying that you know that this selling price and this cap rate didn't reflect that the owner was gonna pay more and the vendors selling for more because they know there's rent or income potential increase.
All we're saying is there's enough evidence, we've given it to you, it's in the questionnaires, that these purchasers bought them with the intention to renovate, to have an
Right.
upside. And that means that you can't treat them as pure value sales and compare them, because that's what's in, again, we don't know what's in the purchaser's head, but they're telling us they bought it to upgrade it. And based on Winnipeg and rent control, if you agree to upgrade, you get a waiver of rent control that allows the investor to increase the rents.
So you're,
But if it were, yeah.
so you're saying that the cap rate isn't reflecting the actual market value of that property with development potential?
It may or may not, but it most likely has this fellow thinking, here's what the NOI is, here's what my income stream is, which is the first thing he's buying, and,
Is he, or is he buying the potential for future?
well, and, I don't know, because we don't know what's in his mind. But then, in addition to that, he may be paying a premium,
Right.
maybe, may not. We don't know, that's why you don't include them.
And if you were a vendor, wouldn't you ask a premium knowing that somebody wants it for development?
Well, I just said though, if you don't own the toolkit, it's of no value to you.
Well, but you brought evidence that all three of them were willing to do the
Yeah,
renovation,
yeah,
so
but
that's
I don't-
irrelevant. You know, but the point is that,
I don't know that you can look at that, quite
well,
honestly.
I don't know if you can discount this or say that the cap rate is too low based on future or money spent on it. That's my question. How can you say that?
Well, because we don't know what makes up the cap rate. We don't do portfolio sales, we don't recognize.
Well, I know,
Because
but
we
these
don't
aren't
know if they're
these aren't
for sales.
portfolio, Mr.
No,
Stewart.
but I'm just
But
going
these are
through the,
individual sales, they're marketed, I believe the assessor said, by professionals in the city, establishing a value, and whether they built in future income increase possibility with renovations or not, it's still an accurate sale, developed or marketed by professionals, purchased by professionals who are in the business of income properties.
Mhm.
And they've decided to pay, you know, in the three comparisons, the average is 4.5% cap rate.
how did they get to that? We don't know.
Well, it was
You're
based,
assuming that there were
well,
agents.
it was based on the
Mr.
current
Wong
income
didn't
divided by
say
the
there
sales.
were agents. He didn't
Yeah.
say agents were represented.
I
I couldn't find agents who were represented. You might ask him again. I don't think.
Well, we asked him that they were bona fide, and we have to assume that somebody analyzed them, considered them bona fide, otherwise they would have thrown them out and not
Yeah.
used them, you know. But,
Well, for sure, what do we know for a fact? Well, we know for a fact
yeah,
that very sophisticated purchasers who didn't have any plan to renovate because the building isn't subject to rent control. It's a new building for 15 years, there's no rent control. So they bought Ward, they're very sophisticated. They think they bought it at 5.5 cap. They don't think they bought it at 5. We've all agreed they bought it at least 5.3 based on the appraisal.
well, I think it was 5.23, we finally, it's either 5 or
Yeah,
5.23 maximum.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah,
Excuse me, at the time of sale.
And last year,
Yes.
when we had no cap rate compression, and last year in front of this board, the cap rate was 5 3/4. How did it go to 5? How did it reduce in this marketplace?
and I'm just gonna make a comment here. This is the first time we've seen the assessor present evidence of the cap rates, and it turns into a big argument of why it's wrong, you know, when he actually brings examples. Whereas before they only relied on a broad analysis from different vendors, but this time he brings one in and it ends up being the wrong information.
Well, it's not
Also-
evidence, it's not good evidence to support his case. It's good
Well,
evidence to
that's
support
for
the
us to
owner's
decide,
case.
I guess.
Well, but no, but
yeah.
you wanna be honest, be honest. That paper doesn't support the position that there's been cap rate compression. Every study done, Cushfield, all these guys, Colliers, all of them are 6%. The market
Well,
is
no,
6%.
okay, let's look at that.
Okay.
Page 7, they're not. You're taking the high end of every report.
Well, but
Cushman is for a low-rise, multifamily, high-rise, is 4.75, 5.75.
Okay.
It's not 6. And
the height of the.
all of them is 6, but, okay, Collier's is 5 to 6.
5 to 6, but 6 is 6.
And City of Winnipeg is 4.9 to 5.3, and CBRE is 5 to 5.75, Cushman 4.75. So there's only one that's at 6 out of the 3. And for you to make a broad statement that they're all at 6 is, it's not accurate.
We are relying on the information on brief, which are third-party reports that indicate that in a range, 6 is not unreasonable.
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
That's
we know
your-
we know you're asking for 6, and that's after.
All right,
the rest of the
yeah,
site.
okay. Mr. Dupont's position, okay, that's all my questions, thank you.
Steve, do you have any questions?
I hate to say yes, but
Well, no, don't.
I'm kidding.
No, yeah, ask if you.
This was one that I was gonna ask way back, so it may have somehow got answered, but this 333 ward seems to, and it came up in previous ones, so it's being used quite a bit. That from the letter here, it was appraised 18,820,000. But it says on here, based on everything, that it would be intended as a 5% cap rate. So what am I missing here?
If somebody paid 18,820,000,
Yep.
they would be buying it at a 5% cap rate. But they didn't, they paid 18 million, they wouldn't pay a year later.
But that was estimated and appraised at that figure by them, right?
By the appraiser.
Yes,
Yeah.
by an appraiser, absolutely.
And at that time.
But they
they
didn't
said-
buy it, they didn't agree with the purchase
Oh,
price.
no, that's fine. I'm just saying, that's what you're giving me. But I think there's another piece in there, I can't go back and find it, where it states that it would appear that cap rates are going lower. It's in here somewhere. I'm sorry.
In the appraisal?
In somewhere, I think it was to do with this property, and if I'm wrong, but cap rates were tending to go down.
Compression in cap rates in this market?
Generally.
I don't think so, but it could be.
Well,
You may be right.
I-
We have a decision from this board from a year ago, 2 years ago, at 5 3/4.
5.5. 5.5, I think.
Wasn't it 5 3/4?
So it's like
5.5.
5 1/2. Sorry.
So, but they did
Actually,
sell the okay, I'm sorry, they
Sorry,
did
and
sell the
on,
property.
sorry, on their page 22,
Yes.
it actually says that with consideration given to the characteristics of the subject property, including location, age, condition, unit mix, quality, project income generating capabilities, as well as to the declining trend in capitalization
Yeah, I
rates.
thought I read it.
A figure of 5%,
Good.
yeah, so,
Oh, yeah.
that's why, that may be where you got it from.
Yeah, I did get
could
it,
be.
because I can't remember.
Because you didn't have the other part of the appraisal, that's where you got it.
Okay, and they did sell the property, when, 2016?
Yes, a year after it was offered to Mar West,
Yeah.
they bought it at 18.
They bought at 18, so,
And there's
Okay.
no opportunity there for restoration because it's a new building.
oh, okay,
So that's a pure sale.
it's fine. You gave me the letter, so
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
I'm just
No, I'm
reading.
not,
I mean, they could
I
have sold
agree with
it,
you.
they could have sold it for 20 million, I don't know that.
well, then they would have paid a different cap rate.
I don't know.
They wouldn't
Okay.
pay 18.8, so they probably wouldn't pay 20.
Okay,
Fine
thanks.
then, done.
And I don't have any questions, because I think my board members did just a good job, as well as Mr. Assessor, so I've got no questions. Now, you do have, you said, a rebuttal. How long's it gonna take? Because Mr. Story's
I
asked
think
for
we
a
can take
break.
a small break.
Yeah, this one goes.
Yeah.
We'll take a small break.
Yeah.
Okay, we will reconvene, and, Mr. Wong, that's what I think, you have, you said, some further rebuttal evidence in the last matter we were hearing?
Yeah, and I think do you have it in front of you now?
Yes.
So, guess if you look at my page 1,
Yes?
oh, sorry, 3, page 3.
You're talking about the original brief,
No, the rebuttal,
rebuttal?
yeah.
Do we have a?
It's this one.
Oh, this one here? Okay, thank you. Okay,
So for 333 Ward, this property was in appeal in 2018, and the applicant agreed with the NOI that the model established at $911,383. If you apply that NOI against the $18 million sale price, the cap rate is 5.06%. Fair taxes indicated a cap rate for 333 Ward is 5.44%. Based on the NOI that was presented in appeal for the 333 Ward in 2018, the cap rate is 5.06%, and the cap rate used in the appraisal for 333 Ward is 5%.
Thank you.
So that's,
Okay.
and on page 5.
Okay.
For I guess 1000 Archibald and 650 Stafford. For 1000 Archibald, if you look on the chart, the sale price is $1,950,000, and the fair tax is indicated cap rate is 5.65. When you look at the 2015 income and you apply it against the sale price of the subject property of 1000 Archibald, the income was say $139,000, $52,000 expenses, and $87,000 NOI. When you apply that $87,000 NOI against the $1.9 million sale price, the cap rate is 4.51%. And for Stafford, fair taxes indicated cap rate is 5.65%, and when you use their 2013 income to estimate the cap rate, it is 5.06%. And on the bottom of the page 5, just the fair taxes indicated cap rate is 5.65. Cap rate based on the actual 2015 income is 4.51. And for 650 Stafford, the fair taxes indicated cap rate is 5.65, and the cap rate based on the actual 2013 income is 5.06. The 2014 income was 16,000, so it wasn't, might indicate high occupancy, or sorry, high vacancy. So on page 6 and 7 and 8 are the income statements for those properties, or for 1000 Archibald and for 650 Stafford. And that would be, I guess, my rebuttal for.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Questions on the rebuttal that was just
I have trouble
presented?
reading it, it's a bit fuzzy, but I'll get to it. I don't think so, I'm really quite, not 100% sure exactly what point you're making, but let me ask you a question on page 5. Talk about 650 Stafford for just a moment. So 650 Stafford, is reported the cap rate of that there was a sale in 2014 with a cap rate of 5.65%.
That's what fair taxes indicated the
And the
cap rate
sale
to be.
price is 24.21. So what is different? You agree with the sale price? Did you change the NOI from the actual, the owners?
I don't, using the 2013 income, their NOI is 122,000, and
Okay.
applying that against the sale price is 5.06%.
When you say using that, you're using typical NOI or actual?
They're from their 2013 income statement.
Okay, that's, thank you.
Okay, any questions, Mrs. Day?
No questions.
Mr.
I'm good, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I have to, thank you. Okay, so we can go on with our next matter, which is 690 Kinnison Boulevard.
Yeah.
Okay, so just for housekeeping, I understand that item 2 and item 3 for sure are the same arguments.
2 and 3 are the same arguments.
Yeah, exactly, so
They're all, it's just all cap rate today.
it's all cap rate.
Yeah, you can actually take it for the next 4 items.
Next 4 items, okay. So.
It's up to Mr. Wong, if he's okay.
Yeah, I think so.
You can still go through your brief.
Yeah, we'll go through our briefs and,
Okay, quickly, so we just know what the cap rates are that we're dealing with, and that's.
yeah. So 690 Keniston?
Right,
Okay, the subject property is 690 Keniston. The roll number is 120-738-81700. It's a residential apartment block that's 14 stories high. It was built in 1978 and has 165 suites with 214 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,227. We have potential income of $2,430,000. We used 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $2,372,000. And we used a 54% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $1,088,000, capped at 5%. We have an estimated market value of $21,779,000, which is approximately $131,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, so that the rents we've used are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. An estimate of their NOI is $1,071,000, which is a little bit lower than what the model has estimated at $1,088,000, but I believe it is very close and supports the model. On page 6 is information on how we derive our cap rates. On page 7 are some cap rate sales. On page 9 is the location of the subject property. On page 10 are some pictures from boltonstates.ca on the internet. On page 11 to the back is the income statements from the owner. And once again, they do have some, I guess, special and major repairs. So maybe my estimate on page 5, the NOI might be a little bit higher than what I've estimated.
okay.
The actual performance supports the model, and I see maintain the assessed value at $21,779,000.
Any questions on this one, Mr. Lee?
No,
Any questions you asked
Mr. Chair,
the
just
other
carry
one, but
forward
asked-
the-
any questions you already asked?
Yes,
Or
carry
asked
forward
this
from
one?
the last
Okay.
case, please.
Mr. Hutchins, any questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Steady?
No questions.
And I have none either. Okay, so Mr. Story, you can go ahead and.
Yes,
your
thank you.
evidence.
Again, the infamous balconies at this is 690 Keniston, built by the same owners, the same year, 1979. Has gone through a reno on the waterproofing of balconies, et cetera, There is more work pending. It's the nature of the building, that type of building requires that. There's a picture of it on the first page of our brief. It's on 3 acres of land where the accommodates the parking. We're in agreement with the assessor on page 5. We're accepting their potential income, their vacancy. The expense allowance is reasonable relative to the actual. We disagree with the cap rate. We believe the cap rate should be 6% based on the discussions we've already had. Page 7 is just the city build-up on these. I've been doing this for a great many years. And page 11 is a photograph of the subject. Page 13, there's a photograph. I can get into that in another file. 17 parking, apparently 31 parking stalls are used by an adjacent building that are surplus to this one. They pay rent, I believe, to them. And it's to allow Bolton Bay, which is the independent living, to function because it's a small piece of property. I'll get into that in a while. The reported sales by the marketplace, these are, we use various reporting agencies. These are reported by what the purchasers suggest, or the vendors suggest the sale price was. So we're going by that. They are all, as mentioned, low rise. One property, 333 Ward, is quite dissimilar to the rest of them because of its age. It's relatively new. These are 1966, 59, 64, and 68. Again, we do, we try to look at age as very important to the cap rate determination. Again, it's age, location, condition. But age also tells you about deferred maintenance and cautions you, and balconies that have to be changed, et cetera, et cetera. On the next page, which is number 617, you'll see a line, and again, Mr. Hutchings mentioned we do take the 6%, because we believe that's what the marketplace is for this type of property, multifamily. These cap rates, these are, for the most part, Colliers do what are called investment quality or investment grade purchases in their reporting. And they may or may not have capital replacement reserves, so we don't know. But the cap rates, if cap rates are low, it can be an indication of an appropriate capital replacement reserve. If they're non-existent, it's more risk that has to be factored in. In 19, under Colliers again, at low rise, high is 6%, and high rise is high is 6%. And we believe that that's what's appropriate here. This again is the decision from last year. Oh, this is 690, yes, 690 Keniston. And at that time, the cap rate was 5% again, as it is today. And the board saw fit to increase it to 5.5% with an adjustment to net operating income. And that would be my brief on 690 Keniston. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on this matter, Mr. Wong?
No questions.
Mr. Hutchins?
No, thank you.
Mr. Finn? And I don't know there. Okay. Now, I wonder if we should go to order, because it seems that you have that 3901 grant happening to some of the property.
Well, I have it because of the, because it's a high rise.
Yes.
You have this
We can
document?
we can take that route if.
This is the one I present to Mr. Wong. You okay with that?
Yeah.
So what, can I just take a minute and go through this so it's clear? It's okay?
Okay.
Yeah. What it is the first three were built by the Martins family and have been the continuous and only owner since 1979, 78 and 79. They were upgraded with primarily the information we gave you early in 2000, and the effective date changed by the department to 1988 and 89. We have no objection with that. They're high rises. There's give you a number of suites. One's 14 floors, the other's 11 floors. They're very similar in terms of the way they operate, but the rents are very, very close. So we think they should all be grouped together. Grants is a little different, obviously, but it's not. But our argument's cap rate is the same there.
Okay.
35 Cromwell was scheduled on this docket, which is interesting because it was purchased by the Marwest people, and it's not typical of something they would buy. It's relatively small. 22 suites, no, just surface parking. But they bought it because it had $600 rents in Norwood Flats and by spending a certain amount of money, you can make an argument that they would be $1,000 a suite, and they're now closer to 1,600. So it was bought for that reason. It was bought, that was part of the incentive to buy it, is they had an opportunity to keep the crews working and to buy property. And they've just done a similar one, 229 Kearney and 200 Belleville. So that's why it's in here, and that's why it's relevant. 335 St. Mary's is a separate purchaser, a different purchaser altogether, but it's also cap rate issues, built in 1954. Then they came along in 2006 and they built Bolton Bay. And there's no story to that, I'll tell you when we get to it. And it was excess city property, all running off of Kempston. And they did a situation, they were able to develop it where no one else could, because they only owned 690. So they could build an apartment block with no parking, as long as they had a cross guarantee that 690 would make parking available.
Mhm.
So that's their first foray into independent living. It's not assisted living, it's independent living. This is where a person pays $1,900 a month and everything's covered. And the department has taken this, I've been at the municipal board twice. I'm happy with the way we do this. I've handled these properties since they were built in 2006. And basically what the boards are doing now, and Mr. Wong will agree or disagree, is taking out the business element and saying, if this was an apartment, what would it be worth? And we're concurring with that, we agree. The only thing is, it's got a cap rate.
Okay.
And this, more than anything, I believe, has to be recognized because there's a business risk to it. You have to have a chef, you have to have staff. So we'll get to that. So that's why they're grouped the way they are. So I believe if the board agrees that we can do the first three plus the next two, the first five, and then do the independent living separate.
Okay. And the independents then are Bolton Bay and the two
Bolton Bay and
Bajay.
the two on Paget. Paget's actually one with the next expansion.
Okay.
So 3901 grant next, is that the plan?
Yeah, so we're gonna put to the bottom of the list then the next three properties. And the one after that then will be, oh, four, St. Mary's too, I guess we should put,
St. Mary's can be with this group, Mr. Chair.
candidate group?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what we'll do then? Do you want to do St. Mary's next then, since this seems to be the next item on the
Sure.
our agenda?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Just give me a
What are we
minute.
doing? We're gonna do next, 332 St. Mary's Road.
Yeah, I do have it.
Okay, when you're ready, Mr. Wong, you can proceed.
Subject property is 332 St. Mary's Road, roll number 060-900-11000. It's a residential apartment block that's 2 stories high. It's built in 1954 and has 9 suites with 1 outdoor parking stall. On page 2 are some sales of the subject property. In June 2016, it sold for $1,158,000. In May 2015, it sold for $940,000. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $817. You get a potential income of $88,000. Use a 1.8% vacancy.
You go a little bit slower, I can't keep up with you.
Okay.
It's great, you're doing a great presentation, but I can't.
Sure. I can slow it down. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We used average rents of $817 to get a potential income of $88,000. We used a 1.8% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $86,000. And we used a 44% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $48,000. Capped at 4.6%, we have an estimated market value of $1,047,000, which is $116,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents we used are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is information on how we derive our cap rates. On page 6 are some cap rate sales. On page 8, the location of the subject property, along with some photos on page 9. Which is from an inspection that one of my colleagues did in 2016.
Sorry, what is from your colleague?
Oh, the pictures.
Oh, okay.
On page 11 is the beginning of their income statement. They're estimating a potential of 85,000, which is a little bit lower than the model has estimated at 88,000. On page 12 is their income statement. On page 15 is their sales mailer that we sent out. In the middle of the page, page 15, it says that their indicated appraisal is about $1,170,000. I believe the appraisal and the sale prices in 2016 and 15 support the support the model, and I have to maintain the assessed value at $1,047,000.
Bruce, Story, do you have any questions of the assessor on this? You can ask
Yes,
now.
just I don't, how familiar are you familiar with the building at all?
I have not inspected the property, but my colleague did.
Okay, there's 9 suites, and only has 1 parking stall for 9 suites, is that correct?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. Would that impact on cap rate? Is that risk to a buyer?
Maybe, maybe not.
Okay. Would it affect on market rent?
Maybe, maybe not.
Okay. And looking at our brief, you can see in the picture that it's pretty modest, front cover of our brief. It's a fairly modest building. No balconies. I don't know where the front door is. On the back. Okay. Thank you, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchings, any questions to the assessor?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Stein, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm looking at their statement, and I think I saw it. They got a potential income of 77,000.
85,383.
Let me just do it and see. From their
Page 11.
statement. Total income 77,626.
Yes.
That's on their statement, right?
Yes.
And you've got 88.
Yes.
Oh, they've got, so there's 2 numbers. That confused me, I guess.
What does that say by monthly rent? Does that say varies?
Oh,
Yeah.
where did you see that?
Page 11. Page
Oh,
11.
on here. So that's
No,
the,
one before, page 11. One more. Yeah, page 11.
Which page are you, Mr. Hutchins?
so
Page
they,
11?
Page?
Page
11
11,
and 11.
the summary.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it doesn't change my question, actually. The potential income on their statement is 85,000, and they're saying the actual was lower than that.
76,000.
Yeah, do you look at that at all, or do you just go by model and that's the way it is?
I think we give it some consideration, but we look at the bottom line in terms of the value that we're estimating, and if I feel like the values that we're estimating are reasonably accurate, then there might be a few line items that might not match up exactly, but if we have the market value fairly accurate, then that's kind of what we're looking at.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, so my questions are, it was built in 1954, and it's a pretty small building, not very many suites. How does it get assigned such a slow cap rate of 4.6%?
What we've seen is some of these smaller buildings are having lower cap rates, and this is a smaller building.
So you think in the marketplace, people are actually going out and paying by these buildings for
Those
the lower caps?
those sales are
expectations?
indicating caps that are low.
Okay, so the model picked it up and you took actual similar properties that actually sold
Yeah.
to trim that cap rate.
Yeah.
So
and-
I know on your standard page, it starts at 4%, so.
Yeah, so in this particular case, like the lowest cap rates are going to some of the smaller blocks, and in this particular case, the cap rate that was used at 4.6% is actually helping to estimate the value at very close to what some of the sale prices are. If that cap rate was higher, say 5.5 or 6, then that value would be really far away from what.
No, I saw you had a sale, but we don't value on the basis of sale, we've got value on a market value
Yeah.
based on cap.
Yeah,
rate
but I'm just saying,
potential.
just as an example of if that cap rate was not 4.6 and it was like 5.5 or 6.5,
Right.
the estimated value would be, say, 700,000, and that's not super close to what it sold
Sold for.
for. And so I'm just saying that using that 4.6 or a lower cap rate, it seems to be estimating value.
Okay, so you're saying the sale justifies the model?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's my question, thanks. Okay. Mr. Story?
Just a quick, which property would this be closest to in your analysis, in your other properties, in the comps you gave us for the city?
Seems like,
What's close to this property?
well, it seems like almost all of the three, like Roach, Talbot, and Maxwell.
It's got one parking stall, remember that?
Yeah, but like if you look at the age of the building and smaller, yeah, they would probably be similar, but that's not what that's not why it's there, but it just happens to be similar.
Okay, Mr. Story, you can go ahead with your evidence.
Well, we've seen again, I'll just refer you to the front page of our brief. Built in 1954, it's got one parking stall, no amenities, no balcony, reasonably good location, St. Mary's Road, but not on the river, or Wellington Crescent, it's reasonable. Going to page 5, we agree with the assessor on the rental potential, bearing in mind that when the owner reported on his questionnaire for potential rent, he did say it varies by month, so I don't know how he did that, how he got that number.
Well, he's just saying, like, you know, the one bedroom rent could be 700 or 750. I think that's what they mean by
Yeah.
varies.
It was a little confusing.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's used 88,000, the city's used 88,000, so a couple of thousand higher than he used, correct? And expense ratio, okay, there's no budget there for caretakers, I don't imagine, but he's a lawyer and he manages it. I don't know how the 4.6 could be justified by anything, to be frank. If you go to page 11, you see an overview of the building, and one parking stall is on the left side. I still haven't figured out how to get into this building, but I'm sure there must be a way. Again, all of the reported sales by owners of multi-tenant properties, and this is a two-story building, so it's low rise. Reported sales by vendors and purchasers to the marketplace was 5.65%. I don't know how it can possibly be 4.3%, or 4.6, whatever it is. I think it's unrealistically low. That's one of the reasons I think is we don't stratify the multi-tenants well enough, because we're comparing this building and its operation in establishing a value for some of the beautiful stuff that's being built now. It's much different. Next page is 7. Again, we're suggesting 6% is a reasonable cap rate for the highest end of the low rise. And if a 9-suite building built past its estimated useful life, it's 54 to 46, is 60 years old. No indication of a change, therefore it's the same. 1954 is the same year, effective age is the same, so there hasn't been any upgrades. How in God's name could it not be the highest of all low-rise? It has to be. And that would be 6%, not 4%. I think there's a mistake by the department on that, to be honest. It's coming to. Again, getting back to the information from on page 5. Again, looking at the Colliers, low rise, 6%. The market tells us that this property would not qualify for the Colliers type reports because it's not investment grade. They wouldn't put a building like this in the reporting system because it'd be distortion. And so I respectfully submit that the board reconsider the city's 4.6 cap rate and apply a 6% cap rate, which in my opinion is much too low for this property. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wong, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Hutchings, any questions?
One quick one. So it's assessed at, or you're asking for an adjustment at 802,000, cap rate at 6%, yet it's sold in 26. Yet it's sold in 2016 for $1,158,000. Anybody know what the cap rate was on that sale?
No, and I don't have the details of the sale. Maybe the city does.
Mr. Wong, do you? That just, maybe you don't have to. You didn't present it, so I'm on the line asking for it.
Well, it's still as I said.
Well, if we can
It's
find
2.5,
anything.
2.5%.
Pardon me?
You know what? I apologize. That's not accurate. If you look at their 2017-18 income, their income was about 26,000. If you apply that 26,000 against the sale price, it's about 2.5%.
So you're not suggesting the cap rate that they bought it at 2.5% cap, right?
Well, I'm just saying that that's the calculation.
And you're using 4.6% as in your workup, okay?
Yes.
That's my only question, thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Stanley?
No questions?
I don't either, thank you. Okay, I guess we can present your.
I'm shocked by the 2% cap.
Sorry.
Okay.
Well,
Cromwell?
it appears to have sold for that. I guess they saw the other potential, Mr. Sorry.
Yeah, could be. I don't know.
What are we doing next?
Oh, yeah, okay, the next one will be absolutely, let's see what we'll do next.
What's the next one, Chris?
I guess we should do either, well, what's one, is it Grant or Cromwell comes in next?
Cromwell would be best, and then, because it's not independent living.
Well, Grant isn't either, though.
Yeah,
Oh,
granted.
haven't we done Grant?
No, we haven't done Grant yet.
3901?
No.
Oh, I thought we did, I'm sorry. No,
Yeah,
we
so we'll
should
do Grant next.
Sorry, gentlemen.
That's okay.
Think about my car. Anything about Grant?
Okay, so here we are
Yes,
at
thank you.
3901 Grant Avenue.
The subject property is 3901 Grant Avenue. It's a residential apartment block that's 9 stories high. It was built in 1979, but we have an effective year built in 1989. There are 76 suites with 13 indoor parking stalls and 90 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,026 to get a potential income of $936,000. We used a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $914,000, and we used a 46% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $488,000. kept at 5%, we have an estimated market value of $9,777,000, which is $128,000 per unit. On page 4 are rent comparables, showing that the rents we used are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses for 2017 and 2016. Their estimated income is about $525,000 and $519,000, which is higher than what the model has estimated at $488,000. On page 6 is information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 7 are some cap rate sales. Page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. Page 10 to 15 are the income and expenses submitted by the owner. The actual performance is a little bit better than what the model is estimated, so I believe it supports the model, and I ask you to maintain the assessed value at $9,777,000.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Story?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Mr. Hutchings, any questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Stanley, any
No,
questions?
no questions.
I don't either, thank you. So, Richard, Mr. Story.
Thank you. Again, I'll, like a broken record, but I'll ask you to refer to the photograph on our brief, and that's a photograph. You can see the full balconies. This is a smaller density building, and that's all that would be allowed, was allowed in those days on Grant Avenue in Charleswood. So it's 9 stories in total. If you go to page 5 of the brief, you'll see that the city has determined the potential rent of $936,551. We concur. The vacancy of 2.4%, because of model vacancy, we concur. Expense ratio, we've checked with our actuals, and 46 is reasonable. Cap rate, we believe 5% is not reasonable, and 6% would be more appropriate. And we're suggesting accepting the rent, vacancy, and expense ratio, applying a 6% cap rate to the 488 NOI, resulting in an assessment of $8,147,000. We respect the board, consider that. Next page is just proofing. We do this for every property, but this one we included it, just to prove that, to show that the expense ratio is reasonable. And we've done that with all of them, and we concur with it. There's an aerial view of the photo on, of the subject, I should say, on 13, page 13. Again, full balconies. Page 14. In parking, there's, how does this work? Let's think about that after the last experience we had. There are 76 suites and 103 parking stalls, which I think is more appropriate for an apartment building than not having parking. Next page, again, these are reported, and I take heed with the comments made by the panel that these are all low rises, and they are, but they're 5.65% from reported sales. The city has some different NOIs, but these were reported by the owner at the time. It might probably just a timing difference. We offered that in just a bottle. Just to, I gave you the rehabilitation detail. If you go to 3901 Grand, it was $600,000 in 2004, 5, and 6. It was a 3-year program. It's in the information if you'd like to see it. And it was what we talked about before: repointing of the exterior walls, curtain for the walls to curtail water penetration based on an engineering study done by Bogue. All balconies secured and anchored with waterproofing around bolts. All balconies sanded, primed, painted, $90,000 in 2007. Windows were painted and replaced where necessary. Patio doors painted and replaced where necessary. Replace and repair all damaged fence on the property. Replace damaged fence on the outdoor pool. That outdoor pool's been closed down. Countertop replacement where necessary in kitchens and bathrooms. Immediate need to resurface parking lot that was not done under the program or their budget constraints. The rent control exemption was for 204, 205, and 206, and very little increase. They didn't note an increase in the rent because they were almost maxed out there. This is known as, kind of interesting, second paragraph. It's 80% leased to senior citizens, and due to location, it's right across from Charleswood Shopping Center. But it doesn't have a lot of the other amenities. It's, the only children living in the building are living with the caretaker. So it's just the nature of the building. It's stayed, it's maintained rates pretty successfully over the years. And so the rehab didn't result in as significant a bump in rents as you might otherwise expect in a rehab. So I respectfully submit that accepting the city's rent potential, vacancy, and expense ratio, writing an NOI of 488,847, I believe that 6 rather than 5 is an appropriate cap rate, given the risk associated with the building, given the age of the building, given the location of the building. And that would result in an assessment of $8,147,444, as per page 5 of my brief. I think it's.
Any questions, Mr. Wong?
Yeah, so one, so their actual NOI is probably a little bit higher than what the model is estimated.
Well, it's all here. I don't. You can find it. I imagine it.
So it's about 523,000, and that's a little bit higher than
Yeah.
what you're using for your value.
We're accepting your value.
Yeah,
This is model. We're accepting
yeah.
the model.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing we disagree with is cap rate.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Steady, any questions?
The municipal board reduced it previously. I think that they've.
I believe they did, Mr. Stenning, Mr. Wong, no, I don't know if I put it in here, I don't see it. I would assume, and I'm guessing it would probably be 5.5, but I don't know.
Unless it was a different property.
Oh, hang on.
No, it wasn't.
Hang on, I do have the
Same
offer. I have it, 5.5. Yeah, it's page
Oh,
21,
board
not this
revision.
one,
I'm
page
sorry,
21,
I-
Mr. Stenning.
I always assumed the municipal board would be getting those. And that was dated,
See page 21, 5.5?
yeah.
Took it up from 5%.
So you, excuse me, have you looked at that to what, well, was it only cap rate or were there other factors, or do you know?
Last year, I think there might have been other factors. It was Mr. Wong and I. Do you recall were there other factors? Probably cap rate. The decision was based on just on cap rate, by the look of it.
Yeah.
It says, oh, it says the assessor's net income, so they didn't accept our net income.
Either you agreed with it or else it wasn't accepted.
Yes, good, I'm not sure.
That's all I have.
We might have asked for a higher vacancy last year. We didn't get it, I think.
Okay, that's your questions. Mr. Hutchins, do you have any questions?
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
I don't have any questions either, so that's great. So, if I'm correct on this then, we've done everything except for the assisted living properties, correct?
I think we still have
Oh, do we?
Cromwell.
Oh, Cromwell, sorry.
We keep leaving Cromwell behind.
Oh, let's do Cromwell then.
I got it right here.
Ooh. Okay, so we're next gonna deal with 35A Cromwell Street. And when you're ready, Mr. Wong, you can go ahead.
The subject property is 35 Cromwell. The roll number is 060-912-64100. It's a residential apartment block that was built, that's 2 stories high. It was built in 1955, but we have an effective year built in 1975. There are 22 suites with 10 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We used average rents of $656 to get a potential income of $173,000. We used a 1.8% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $170,000. We used a 42% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $98,000. Capped at 4.5%, we have an estimated market value of $2,185,000. That's $99,000 per unit. On page 4 are rent comparables, showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of their income and expenses with $75,000 for 2017, $88,000 for 2016, and $83,000 for 2015. On page 6 is information on how we derive our cap rates. On page 7 are cap rate sales. On page 9 is a picture of the subject property. Page 10 are some interior pictures of the subject property. There was a reasonable amount of work done to the property. On page 11 to 15 are the income and expenses submitted by the owner. On page 16 is a permit for the work that was done, that was taken out in 2011.
Page 15?
16, sorry. So there's interior alterations, which include removing and upgrading existing windows with energy efficient models, remove and replace kitchen cabinets, counters, appliances, flooring, fixtures, and water lines. When you go to my page 5, here the subject property seems to be performing lower than what the model is estimating. They're averaging maybe 83,000 in NOI, and the model has estimated 98,000 in NOI. In light of this, I wouldn't be opposed to a value of $1,801,000. Which is the NOI is 81,071 at 4.5%. So it does appear that the model has overestimated in this instance, and like I said, I wouldn't be opposed to a value of $1,801,000.
So you've changed the NOI, I'm sorry to interrupt.
I'm just saying it appears that the model is a little bit high, and I wouldn't be opposed to an NOI of about 81,071.
NOI of 81,000?
I'm thinking, what are you basing NOI on?
Their actuals. Just like their actuals on page 5, about 75,000, 88,000, and 81,000, and I wouldn't oppose a value based off of an NOI of 81,000, which is very, very close to, it's right right in the middle of what it actually achieves.
So you're using 81,000 then, even.
81,071.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Any questions of the assessor, Mr. Story?
Yes. Does the model take into consideration for cap rate and any market rents, the fact that there are fewer parking stalls than suites?
I believe it does.
Okay. So this one has a,
Units, apartment properties with more parking will likely get a higher rate of rent.
okay, and a lower cap rate,
I'm not sure if that's considered.
no? This has, you're aware, this has 22 suites and, I think there's 10 parking stalls? 10 parking stalls. This is half, and the biggest concern they have with this building is that a waiting list for parking. Because their tenants have to park
Well,
down the
the
street.
thing is, there's a lot of buildings that sell where they don't have any parking. They still
Oh, we
sell.
just-
They
We
still
just
sell.
had one, yeah.
They still sell for a good amount.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure if.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. And if you were to take your suggestion, and I would be pleased to take it, to reduce the NOI to 81,071, but I would ask the 6% cap rate, which would be 1,350,000 rounded. I'd be more than happy.
Well, you're asking questions right now, you're presenting your answer.
Thinking out loud, Mr.
No, I anticipated that was,
Hoping.
Mr. Story, I anticipated that was being your argument, but I don't know if it's an appropriate question.
Okay. So, are we ready for my presentation?
Yeah, we're not gonna ask you questions, go ahead.
Okay.
I think we just had it.
What's that? Oh, Mrs.
Yeah.
Stern, you have a question?
No, I said, I think we just had it.
Oh, okay.
No, you're asking for the adjusted NOI the city has just authorized.
I just wanted you to
And
know
you're saying
that I
and you're saying
concurred with Mr.
And you
At
feel
6.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, 6% I concur.
that's fine. Any questions?
And we had we're in Cromwell, right? Still in Cromwell?
I
Where?
think it's. I think he's done. I think.
Well, if you're done, you're basically saying you like the NOI that Mr. Wong just
Well,
presented.
no, I didn't mean that to be my summation, but
Oh,
I haven't gone through my brief yet, I don't believe. I'll go
you
through
haven't,
it.
but do you think it's necessary?
Okay, so I wanted you to just have a look, gentlemen. I'm making an ass of myself with respect to balcony and risks associated with it. Again, no balconies. This is a well-located property in Norwood Flats, so it's walking distance to downtown, thank God, because there's no parking.
And in this case, you can see how you can get into the building.
Yes, you can. That's a positive. It's actually 2 buildings. You see, it's 2 sections, there's 2 entrances, I think. It's A and B Cromwell, there's 2 there. So I go to my page 5, and again, we agree with the assessor's NOI, particularly with the adjustment. We disagree with the cap rate, the 4.5 we think is unreasonable. If you go to page 11, this is an overview. And if you look across the back lane, you're at Santa Lucia Pizza on Marion and the bridge, just so you know where you are. And again, a low rise, so these cap rates would be appropriate. On page 13, these are reported sales by owners and vendors in the system, so there must be some merit to them. They're 5 3/4, 5.65. And we go to our 218 cap rate, page 7, column is, again, I believe that the cap rate is influenced by the fact that there's no parking, because that influences everything. It goes back to vacant, it creates vacancy, it causes a lower probable market net rent. I know that's the single biggest complaint that the owners have since they bought it, is that parking is always going to be a problem. And I refer you again to the 6% on the Collier's report. There is a decision here, and there's not a lot of information. It said it's based on the assessor's recommendation. So maybe you had the same kind of recommendation last year, Mr. Wong, I don't know.
I would
Doesn't
say
tell us,
likely.
doesn't tell us what the decision is.
So-
Page 17?
So you're gonna accept his recommendation this time? And then we can just, we did last time. It'll be about,
Well, I can at 6%, absolutely.
no, I'm just saying, the recommendation though, what is it?
It would have been my recommendation, it wouldn't have been it wouldn't have been mixing and matching certain.
Yeah, and of course. So the recommendations this time is 1,801,000. Last time it was 1,707,000. If we were to go your route, we're gonna have a way lower amount than was agreed to last time.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
They spent money to get
Okay.
where they are. If you go to the next page, there's a building permit here for $275,000. There's only 9 suites, so there's a reason for that, and that's exactly why they bought it, is because they had the upside of being able to
Increase the rents.
improve the NOI
Yeah.
down the road. They didn't buy this, whatever cap rate they paid, they didn't buy it just for the sake of the cash flow. It's not enough effort for a large company. They bought it because of the restoration, and they did a lot. They did every suite, if you read Mr. Wong read it actually. So I respectfully submit that the 4.5% is not realistic, and that it's not elevated, not escalated, nothing. 6% is more appropriate. 1,639,000 would be my suggestion.
Any questions, Mr. Wong?
When did the owners buy the property?
In the last 2 years, I believe. Let me just check here. I can't remember exactly, but it would be in here. They bought it,
Here. So,
here's
such
this,
a material.
subject.
There's a purchase in June of 2016 for
That's it. Where do you see
1,158,000.
that, Mr. Dunn?
Hmm?
Where's that?
On the assessor's information,
Yeah.
second page, sales.
Second page?
Sales history.
Oh, sale history, it's too
Yeah.
big, it's 3,000. Yeah, they bought it
16,
for
yeah.
$400,000 in June of, no, that's not them.
Sorry, where are
Somebody
you guys
else bought-
looking, if you don't mind me asking?
No, that got a
I
different
mean, I have the wrong
number.
thing here, sorry.
I'm looking at 400,000.
If I'm-
No, that's
Before you
206,
tell
they just
Yeah.
bought it recently.
How about 400,000?
So, when did they buy?
Well, I'm gonna say they bought in the last 3 years. Certainly not in 206, they didn't have it that long.
Do you know how much they bought it for?
I'm guessing,
Don't guess, it's okay. You don't know.
don't guess?
No, you don't know, so who answer?
So you don't.
I'm not telling. I don't know, I'm guessing, but I
Okay.
shouldn't guess. I accept the Mr. Chairman's advice, don't guess.
Higher than the assessed value?
No, much lower. Much lower.
That would be all my questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'm good, Mr. Chair, thank you.
No questions. So you're indicating in this one, you think a 6% cap rate is reasonable, but you admit that this is a development project, so it should, a purchaser's gonna buy that, you've seen the potential in it, put some money and increase the rent, and this would
Well,
probably.
they did, that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened.
And that's probably why it should probably have a higher cap instead of a lower one.
Well, the issue is that what happens is our expectations sometimes don't come to fruition. So you can go and make
We'll
the,
find out next cycle.
and you can make the suites
I'll be
beautiful,
speculating right now.
but if you can't park, then you're not gonna rent them. So you don't get, you can anticipate,
Of course, this is where
if
we're,
you spend 2.25.
this is where we're flats though, people walk to, work in
Well,
the
thank
hospital and
God.
stuff like that.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
God.
You know.
Or they
Yeah.
have.
This-
the-
That's why a property like that can exist where it exists without parking.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
However, you're also, and I said that jokingly, you're living from here to there to a very active restaurant. It's on the back line.
Oh, okay.
Maybe, I didn't make that earlier, but location-wise. It's positive because it's called Norwood Flats, and the front of the building looks over kind of a park playground. It's nice. The back, however, looks at parking and a restaurant.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've done that one, and now we can deal with the three properties that you say are related, because they all include a business portion, because they're.
Correct,
This is a
yeah.
living, okay?
Yeah. And the one that has anomalies, if you're doing one in order, we would probably do Bolton Bay first. It's also the oldest.
45 Bolton Bay is the next one on our agenda.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, when everybody's ready, Mr. Wong can proceed.
The subject property is 45 Bolton Bay. It's a residential apartment block that's 4 stories high. It was built in 2006, and it has 94 suites with 25 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $900 to get a potential income of $1
Mr.
million.
Long, a little bit slower, please.
Sir.
Trying to, can't read as fast as you're speaking.
On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We used average rents of $900 to get a potential income of $1,015,000. We used a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $990,000. And we used a 43% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $563,000. Capped at 5%, we have an estimated market value of $11,266,000, which is $119,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents that we used are actually a little bit below what is in the market. We reflected that it's a maybe lower than average property in the rents. We also have some expense ratio comparables that show that what the model has estimated does represent the market at about 43%. And also when you look at the income and expense summary at the bottom of page 4, like they actually do have a residential rent number, which is just for the rent and not any sort of other services. And they have an estimated residential rent of $1,700,000, with the expenses being $899,000. We have an estimated NOI of $872,000, which is much higher than what the model is estimated at $563,000. On page 5 is information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 6 are cap rate sales. On page 8 is the location of the subject property and an overhead view. On page 9 are some pictures, interior pictures of the subject property and a description of the property. Page 10 is their income statement. You can see on the top they have their residential rent at $1,702,000 and their second person rent to $61,000. So that's about a little bit over $1,700,000. On page 17 are some is the CMHC report for the rents for properties that are older than, or sorry, newer than 2005. The subject property is comprised mostly of 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, and the average 1 bedroom for newer buildings is about $1,191, and for 2 bedrooms is about $1,392. So if you look at the model, it supports the model rate of $900 that we used. On page 18, the permits that were taken out in 2005. The project value is estimated to be $8.3 million. The market has gone up significantly from 2005 to the reference date of 2018. I feel that the project value of $8.3 million supports the assessed value at $11,266,000. And I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $11,266,000.
Thank you. Mr. Story, any questions on the assessor?
Mr. Wong, have you had a chance to visit this property?
I have not.
Is there a reason, just out of curiosity, why the assessors don't visit the property, just workload?
It's probably mostly time constraint.
Are you familiar with the history of how this property became available to build?
I am
Do you have
not.
any history of it?
I'm not.
Are you aware that there was a land swap with the city of Winnipeg that is now Joe Malone Park to allow, you don't? No, it's okay, you don't. Okay. The land has a total of 74,000 square feet, that's 1.7 acres, is that correct? You aware of that?
74,348.
And you indicated, I think, that there were 25 outdoor parking stalls. There's actually 17, and then the roundabout, so let's assume 25. It's a limited number of parking stalls, would you agree, for an independent living facility?
I couldn't say.
Okay. The staff parking, I indicated in our brief on 690, there's 31 stalls are leased by 690 because they don't have parking on site. Does that factor into your cap rate consideration?
I don't believe so.
Okay. It's absolutely adjacent to a retention pond. Does that factor into your decision?
I'm not sure.
The back of the building is on a street. There is the residence of Mather Street. Does any of that factor in? Talking about location at this point? No?
I'm not sure if that influences the cap rate.
Okay. But the fact that you're buying a bundle of services when you pay rent here. You may pay $2,400, $2,300 a month. However, with that, you get all your meals, all your transportation, your medical appointments. You virtually live there, like, with all of your costs. So there's a business element there, and that's supplying those services to the tenants, correct? Are you familiar with that?
Well, when I look on their page 11, on my page 11, sorry, at the very top it says the rent for the residential portion is 1.7 million, and then the rent for the resident services is 1.1 million.
Yeah. Okay. And you made reference in here in your brief about a second bedroom, a second person?
The rent residential for a second person income is 61,000.
The rent for one person?
A second person.
61,000 a year?
That's how much their income was.
I'm sorry, what page are you looking at?
11.
Third range at the top, it's basically, I think, Mr. Story, because it'd be an extra person to feed.
It is, and they charge about
Yeah.
$300 a month. They don't charge. Okay, so we won't worry about the financial, that's not what we're here for today. And again, you acknowledge that none of the new comps on page 6, Roche, Talbot, Maxwell, are independent living facilities. They're traditional apartment blocks, correct?
No, we're looking at this as an apartment building, and the cap rates are apartment cap.
Correct, yeah. But that's what I'm saying, they aren't, we're doing it that way, but that's not, they're not apartment blocks. Or pardon me, they're not independent living, they're just
They are not.
apartment level. Yeah, thank you. And are you aware that the market to sell this type of business is somewhat limited? Or no?
I'm not aware.
Okay, is that your questions? Do you have anything else?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stain, do you have any questions to the assessor on this?
No, I don't think so. No.
Mr. Hutchins?
Yes, thank you. Page 4 of your presentation, Mr. Wong, income and expense summary at the bottom. So from their data, they've split out the rent to be 1.772 million. That's excluding any support for meals or anything, or driving around or anything?
I can't say for sure, but
Okay.
it seems to indicate so.
Yeah, then expenses, then you removed approximately $900,000 for services not included, come up with a net operating income from their statements of $872,000.
Yes.
And the model is using for your workup approximately 300.
560.
That was just the 30,000.
Yeah, so you're using $300,000 less than the declared net operating income. Arguably, how that was justified, but you were at $300,000 less. Okay, so what you're saying is you're assessing it as to not include any of the services that are included in this property?
Yes.
Okay. All right, 5%. That's my only question, thank you.
Thank you. And I don't have any questions, thank you. Mr. Story?
Thank you. This is a cul-de-sac that runs off of Keniston, just behind the ponds, south of Grant. That is fronted on Grant, on Keniston by the 690 Keniston, the property we did just a moment ago.
Right.
It fronts on it, and this building is behind it. You can hardly see it from as you go by. And this is what's in the picture. This is looking at it from the cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac is there because this used to be a road that went down, and there was a retention pond just on the left side of the photograph here. It was built in 2006. It was only capable of being built because the same owner owned the building next door, otherwise you couldn't park. They have over 30 staff, they have 30 staff stalls. They have to have at least 11 to 17, depending on the time of week, for visitors, and they don't have them. They don't have that many parking stalls. So because they have a relationship with the neighbor, same owners, they get the use of the parking. Our issue today is we accept the potential rent, and Mr. Wong is correct. The way the department has been doing it for the last several years is trying to anticipate what it would be, just a real estate portion, because it's so confusing as to, do you mark up the services, or do you provide them at cost, do you subsidize them? It's very difficult to determine the value. They're not easy to sell. You'll see that the Mar West group have 4 or 5 of them in Winnipeg. One developer decided to build one in Regina. He had nobody there who was interested in the operation of this type of facility. They're almost a seniors hotel. They came to Mar West invested in the one in Regina, so it's right across Canada, it's very limited, and that should affect cap rate in my opinion. It's a business model that works now and may work in the future. It was primarily motivated by baby boomers coming through, and what happened is the owners of these properties were a little surprised because they assumed 65-year-olds would move in there, when in fact 85-year-olds moved in there. And they were fooled by the fact that 50 is the new 70 and 60 might be the new 80. So now they're building them in such a way that when that cycle passes, that there'll be a property there that doesn't have extraordinary common areas and has a little bit larger suites. These are still the old dated model, they're small suites, and may or may not be convertible to an apartment, I'm not sure. So, I'm suggesting the 6% is appropriate. It relates to the fact that there's another business element to it. You're limited to the number of investors you have for this type of property. It's on a strange location. Councillor Steek at the time was instrumental in making a land swap to create a park on Taylor and Bolton, and it's called Joe Malone Park, and gave Mar West this piece of property for that piece of property, so they ended up with the park and they're the end of that cul-de-sac, and that's Bolton Bay. But it's not a property, not a location that a typical investor would probably find attractive.
She's asking for 6% cap rate.
Pardon me?
She's asking for 6% cap rate.
6% cap
On
rate.
the city's NOI,
Yes, correct.
rather than your NOI. Okay, any questions, Mr. Wong?
Are you saying that Mar West purchased a independent living in Regina?
I believe it's Regina, yeah, Brio.
Huh?
Yeah, I believe so.
What is do you know the name of the independent living?
I believe it's Brio, B-R-I-O. I can confirm it. It's in Regina. It's in construction, I think.
So the original developer developed it and Mar West bought it afterwards?
No, it's not built yet. They're building it.
Oh, so Mar West is
You need
building
an
it?
operator for these things, because they're businesses. They're like a hotel.
Oh, okay, so they're building an independent living in Regina?
They're not building it, they're buying it.
Oh,
Somebody's doing a development,
yeah,
and the big thing now is called age in place, where you get all the different types of service requirements. So they're buying the independent living.
okay.
As far as I know.
Somebody else is developing it, Mar
Yeah,
West is
developing
buying
it.
it, and it's not finished yet?
That's my understanding.
Okay, no, that's all my questions.
Okay. Any questions, Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Stenny?
Yeah, I got a few.
Go ahead.
You just come out and say it's not an easy building to sell. Is that what you said?
It's not easy. I said the typical investor may not care for this location. Is that what you mean?
The location.
Yeah. Yeah. The location, Mr. Stein, the location
I know where it
is
is.
at the back end of the building.
I know where it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
and it's,
Okay, I don't want to be argumentative, but that's your personal opinion?
well, I'm just saying,
Well, I mean-
maybe, I don't know.
It just happens I know them quite well, and
Well,
my opinion would be different, and maybe you shouldn't say that, but it's.
well, it's kind of acknowledged, the city encouraged the purchaser to utilize it. It was space that was a bit of a kid's hangout. It was on a retention pond, which is dangerous to leave unattended.
Could be a bonus.
Bonus?
Be on,
Retention
be
pond?
on a pond. Could be a bonus. Anyway, I don't want to get
I
into an
know.
argument, but
It's
I
not
just-
there anymore anyway, they
I
filled it
wanted
in.
to be more
It's not there
specific.
anymore?
Eh?
It's not there anymore, so then
I
it's
believe
not,
it's filled
it
in.
shouldn't be a problem then, why are you mentioning it?
No, at the time it was built.
You mentioned parking,
Yes, parking is a problem.
so there would be very few percentage of people living there would have a car.
That's correct, but staff does.
So it shouldn't be a problem particularly.
Well, it is a problem. You know,
Okay.
when you don't think it is, it is.
Don't
Because
have-
it's only 70,000 square feet. It's a little over an acre and a half.
I don't know.
So it's very small to do an apartment block. But they did it because they own the building next door, they wouldn't, in my opinion.
And you also said it was an older model, an older style model. Said that.
Well, it's a model they built in 2006.
Yes.
The model they built in 2008 has a lounge, has delivery to your room. It's quite different. They built them differently.
But they only have a 2.4% vacancy and a waiting list.
They have waiting lists, but they're
Yeah.
not typical waiting lists, but they have a vacancy. They have a turnover, average is turnover. You're gonna get a natural turnover, they're month-to-month sweeps.
That's all I have.
Yeah.
I have no questions. Okay, so basically, are the other two properties just like this, and you're asking for 6, the city's got them at 5?
Yes.
And do we have to go through them all, or if we just basically say that everything, all the others you gave us? I mean, I'm not gonna limit anybody, you think?
I'm happy to extend the arguments through if Mr. Wong is.
I'm okay with reading the subject
Okay,
and roll number,
good,
the address and roll number.
okay, and will, all the evidence that's been given on,
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
to now, we'll accept for them?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, so then we'll do the 2 on Pagette, 95 Pagette, and I guess 85 Bichette first. Okay?
Okay. But then we keep up. Oh, we still got more to go.
There's two.
Sorry, which one are we doing first?
85.
85. Okay.
Let's go numerically.
Sure. 85, the subject property is 85 Paget. The roll number is 100. Paget. 85 Paget. The roll number is 100-064-412-00. This one's identical in terms of the residential rents and the permits. And that would be my presentation.
Thank you. Okay, and do you have any questions on
No, I'm
this?
fine, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any questions, board members?
No, thank you.
Okay, let's do 95%. Oh, no, do you have any, your argument, I guess you want to put
I
forward?
think there's a different product. Pardon me?
And your argument, do you want to present it, or should we
Well,
just?
I just want the board to be familiar with the
Okay.
property.
Okay.
It's,
Well, please go ahead.
there's a photograph on the front. No, I don't have to. 85 Paget is on the front. It's on Sterling Line Parkway. Access, not off, no access off of it, but it is by Paget. Just want you to be familiar with it. It's independent living. The suites are, this is the first, 85 was built first, and then 95 was added to it. 95 have a little larger suites with a better chance, hopefully, to be an apartment if and when the cycle passes. Other than that, it's treated like an apartment block, and you just apply multi-tenant market rents. There is more risk associated with it, which automatically should require it, and more risk means that you might have a limited number of buyers. Remains to be seen, but across Canada, there's just a handful of people that invest in these. They're fairly high maintenance to maintain an independent living facility. You're dealing with people with medications and diets and staff, and it's a business into itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Wong?
No questions.
Board members, any questions?
Thank you.
No, no, thank you. Okay, and so now we'll do 95%. Mr. Wong, when you're ready.
The subject property is 95 Paget. The roll number is 100-064-411-00. Same as the last one, where there's the residential rents and the permit values that support the assessment, and that's my presentation.
Questions, Mr. Story?
Yes, just
Go ahead.
if I can just clarify on, well, I'll ask a question. Mr. Wong, you're showing on page 1 of your brief that this has a parking stalls. 128 parking stalls for 106 suites, correct?
Yes.
And this, you're aware that this is optional. It can be either independent living or simply a rental unit. You don't have to buy the services. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
So it's looking more forward as to where this building will be in 20 years from now, when the bubble passes, the bubble being us. And they're more, and what happens is every time they build something that this includes parking. This is a seniors complex that does include parking and is used. And this shows that as properties get older, there's functional obsolescence. You wouldn't build what they built on Bolton today because it doesn't have enough parking. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Okay. Well, no, you were asking questions, but your presentation, though, I see you're asking for 6% on this one, and
6%, yes.
whereas in the city's got it at 5 still. So
Correct.
even though this one is more updated and it lends itself to being other uses, so.
It has more risk though, because now it's an apartment block in a seniors building, where all of your neighbors are in different needs of service.
Okay, thank you
It's a
very much.
different dynamic.
Okay, well,
Thank you, gentlemen.
thank you. Okay, well, we've completed everything. Thank you very much for your cooperation, everybody.
Can I just say a couple words before we finish?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to say that we've had a couple examples here of a smaller apartment building with a lower cap rate where the model seems to have estimated the value fairly accurately, and also for the 333 Ward properly, we estimated it at 18 million, which is 18.2 million, and sold it for 18 million, and we used a 5% cap. I just want to say that for large properties and for small properties, it seems like our cap rates are our cap rates produce accurate estimates of value, and I just wanted to finish off with that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we hope you feel that way, because that's your whole job, so thank you.
Okay, and our parking's challenged, so we want to do this quickly, so if you can.
Where,
Yes,
give me
great.
1 minute or 30
Yeah.
seconds.
Well, we've done them all, I believe.
We have, we just have to make decisions now, so.
Well, I can help with that.
Yeah, you can leave so we can do that.
Did you want to make summations, Sawan, about why we're waiting for you?
No, we're done.
finished.
We're done. We're done.
Oh, I just said,
Yeah,
wait.
yeah. No, I mean, it'll take me about 1 minute to get out of here.
Oh,
What I was
okay.
trying
We
to say.
appreciate that.
Yeah.